Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Became the Shadow of Artoria Fate Stay Night movie. Before we start, please go support marioiale for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken characters' gender, but of course Naruto is a male. Chapter 1. Three figures could be seen floating in the green skies, battling for supremacy. Naruto, Uzumaki and Uchiha Sasuke threw everything they could at their mad ancestor, Kagaya Otsutsuki, in a desperate gambit to seal the rabbit goddess. The two fought effectively, like a well-coordinated team despite years of rivalry and time wasted trying to kill each other. The two old friends and rivals covered for each other's weaknesses, but try as they might, they could never get close enough to seal a woman's demon. Damn this rabbit hitch. Naruto muttered to himself, I wish I knew my father's Thunder God technique. Sasuke had the guts to snort and then rebutted, you're too stupid to have used it anyway, loser. The two cut short their conversation when they were forced to go on the defensive once again when Kagaya attacked them with her ash-killing bone. The Uzumaki wasted no time as he flew behind the ancient goddess Rasengan forming in his hand, hoping to pull it towards his ally and finally seal it away for good. But that slimy black Zetsu interfered, alerting the goddess to his intentions, and she quickly backhanded him away. She turned toward him, once again preparing her deadly attack. Sasuke approached, seeing that the woman had her back to him and was focused on Naruto, who was once again flying towards the horned figure, hoping to land a finishing blow as well. Only for her to respond with the least expected chakra blast. The two friends were struck and sent plummeting to the ground. Kagaya used her incredible speed to feint. As they fell, she aimed and unleashed a barrage of ash-killing bone bullets. One of which hit Sasuke in the lower right abdomen. Naruto, while correcting himself, saw what happened to his oldest friend and immediately flew toward him. Just as he managed to grab the Uchiha, a portal opened right beneath their feet. With no room to correct their momentum, they passed through it and fell onto a landscape similar to the one they had just crossed. A barren desert, but the sky was blue instead of green and the sands were bleached instead of the red hue. And he could make out the familiar moon. However, none of that mattered now, as Naruto cradled Sasuke, whose body he felt crumble beneath his hands. Sasuke struggled to breathe as Naruto applied pressure to his lower abdomen. The sudden realization of his impending death softened his empty heart as he felt his loved ones calling out to him. He used his free hand to touch Naruto's face, the blonde fool trying to reassure him that everything would be okay. The last Uchiha coughed and struggled as he spoke, Naruto, you have to cough, you have to finish her off. Sasuke could feel he didn't have much time, so he fought through the pain and searched deep within himself. He scraped out all the chakra he had left to carry out his final feat. It was a painful process alone, not to mention the fact that he was dying and his body's chemical makeup was changing. Yet he endured it, fought through the feeling of exhaustion and the emptiness and drowsiness that were rapidly creeping over him. Avenge us, Naruto, avenge Itachi, the Uchiha, everyone. His red and purple eyes met sage orange as he left one last message. Wait Sasuke, don't die, you hear me? Naruto yelled as he tried his best to heal his friend by using his sun seal, but his luck ran out when his sixth-path sage mode gave out at that very moment. The blonde stared wide-eyed, it can't be, it can't be. His hand trembled and his lips quivered in anguish, tears beginning to stain his cheeks. His friend was dying and there was no natural energy in the air he could draw upon to save him, Sasuke. Sasuke said, a loser to the end, thank you Naruto, for being my friend. As the last of his chakra left him through his hand and into the blonde, his body also turned to dust and crumbled into thin air. Naruto sat on all fours, anguish filling his chest as he felt his heart being ripped out and he let out all the anger and sadness in his voice. Reality began to sink in as his voice began to crack and fail, his hoarse voice turning into a guttural scream. His dreams seemingly crumbled around him. He couldn't save his friend, nor would he keep his promise to Sakura. Without Sasuke, he would never be able to bring peace like he had promised Nagato. He would never become Hokage. After all, if he couldn't even save his friend or keep the simplest promise, what right did he have to be Hokage? Her vision stung, not the familiar sting of crying, but a strange sting as red tinged her vision. Another portal opened and Kagaya crawled out, standing over it. Suddenly, the pain Naruto felt transformed into something, the sadness turned into rage, the sight of the goddess awakened a hatred beneath his skin and consumed him. He no longer even thought about Kurama as he blocked out everything around him. Kagaya let out a gasp as she felt her powers being compressed, the very place she was standing in was fighting back against her, she realized with horror. Her blonde descendant took the opportunity to go on the offensive as she threw every punch, kick, and elbow she could. She was beaten like never before until a kick knocked her flat on her back. A golden hue began to surround her as she began to fade, but that didn't matter to Naruto, who looked at her with the same red eyes his son Hagoromo had once looked at her with. No, it was more similar to those of his grandson, Indra. It was pure hate. The Rasengan slammed into his navel, drawing screams of pain from his lips. Black Zetsu tried to intervene, but was thrown back. The blonde stepped away momentarily, her torment ceasing for the moment. And after a few minutes, she returned, holding Zetsu by the neck, his eyes staring coldly at her. When he raised his right hand toward her, it now contained the sun and moon seals. Naruto's downward strike was all Kaguya saw as she ceased to exist. Naruto let out a sigh, all the exhaustion from fighting for the past 2 days and the emotional turmoil finally catching up with him. And he collapsed on the hot sand, not even caring that such temperatures were burning his face after all. What was a little physical discomfort against the exhaustion that had just hit him like a jubi bomb? Zeldris smiled in amusement at his discovery. It seemed the champion he had summoned had finally materialized. The strangely dressed orange jumpsuit wearing blonde was fast asleep in the sands of the scorching desert that had finally deigned to appear. The man picked up the teenager, threw him over his shoulders, and started walking away. He had places he'd rather be than the middle of the northern Sahara. Let's see what you have to offer, boy. I hope you find your time in this world enjoyable. Naruto floated along the familiar water that formed the floor of his subconscious mindscape, suddenly realizing something very harsh and violent. I could really understand Sasuke now. That wasn't an arbitrary thought that had randomly popped into his mind now. These were the images he was seeing with his own eyes. He watched the Uchiha massacre firsthand through the eyes of a young, innocent Uchiha. He watched the compassionate eyes of the village, the deceitful words of the elders and the Sandaime Hokage. Orochimaru, fighting Itachi, his eyes stared emotionlessly into memories that were not his own. Suddenly, he could feel someone beside him, and he turned his head to see his now dead friend, lying beside him as he too looked on. You know, I intended to kill you once we defeated Kaguya. Sasuke's echo spoke. You wish. I would have stomped you into a corner so you'd finally break through your thick skull, Naruto replied, annoyance flashing in his voice. The blonde looked back at the images, sighing, we're not Indra and Ashura, nor are we Madara and Hashirama. I promised to end this cycle of conflict with Nagato and the wise old man. And I will always keep my promises. Even if it meant your death. Sasuke asked genuinely, there wasn't a hint of malice in his voice. Yes, if I had to give my life for peace, I would have done it in a heartbeat. Naruto said, but what you intended wouldn't have led to peace, would it? We were both missing a piece of the puzzle. We were missing each other from the equation. Sasuke admitted, but now I'm dead. It should have been me, Naruto uttered. The Uchiha shook his head, it doesn't matter anymore. Naruto. I left you my chakra and my eyes. I wanted you to avenge us, and I'm not willing to accept the loss of my clan's legacy completely. My ambitions were to kill Itachi and restore my clan. I don't go back on my word. Naruto chuckled, taking my lines now, huh? Don't get it twisted, Naruto. I made sure my clan would survive through you. You're my only friend, promise me you won't let him die. Naruto made eye contact with the Uchiha and saw the seriousness on his face. Naruto closed his eyes and said, I broke my promise to Sakura to take you home, and I don't even think I can go back to the elemental nations. I can't even sense nature chakra. Why do you trust me? Because you never break your word. What exactly did you do? Naruto asked, curiosity seeping through his voice. I gave you all the chakra I had left, and I gave you my Sharingan along with it. Sasuke said, making Naruto sit up in alarm. Wait, wouldn't you have to gouge out my eyes and insert your own for that? The black-haired Uchiha shook his head and crossed his arms, a faint smile on his face. I had learned a way I could pass it through my chakra. I didn't think I'd ever need it, but here we are. The technique could only be used if I were about to die. I doubt you'd be able to use its full power right away, but you might eventually. This is how I'll continue the Uchiha legacy, because your children will inherit the Sharingan. My clan won't die with me. I promise, I'll pass it on. Satisfied that he had secured the blonde's promise, the chakra construct began to fade, leaving one last piece of advice. Now you will see the world through my eyes. Succeed where I failed, my old friend. Do not let hatred consume you, Naruto. Just like that, the images faded away along with his friend's chakra construct. Naruto found himself in his seal space, where Kurama towered over him. Naruto simply floated silently, his eyes saddened as he mourned his friend's death. The tailed beast was surprisingly silent, as if allowing him space. It seemed like hours before they spoke, but the orange-furred fox broke the silence. I don't think we'll be back anytime soon. Yeah, could you tell if there were any living things wherever we landed? Naruto asked. I could only faintly sense a human presence very close to us. I bet they're taking us. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. I left my body in the middle of a desert. The fact that they found it relieves me a little. What's up with the Uchiha? Kurama asked out of nowhere. We talked. Kurama, how could he have obtained the Sharingan without taking his physical eyes? We spoke briefly when he died. He passed on everything he was to you. That's how it worked. The tailed beast replied. It helped that the brat inherited some of the old man's chakra. Naruto nodded. I should probably come practice with him, right? Kurama lay down with his head between his paws. Do what you want. Do you have any idea where we are? None at all. It would be hours before Naruto felt the pull to wake up, and with one last breath he surrendered, mentally preparing himself for what was to come. Ah, you're finally awake. An elderly-looking man spoke to him as he sat up, trying to get rid of the sleep in his eyes. He had a throbbing headache, probably the result of whatever Sasuke had done to him. "Where am I?" Naruto asked, noticing that his voice was dry, a result of the scorching heat he felt in the air. "In Egypt, fortunately, you didn't find yourself deeper in the Sahara Desert." The old man replied, "My name is Zeldris. Welcome to a world called Earth." "Earth? Where are the elemental nations?" Naruto asked, his voice gradually rising in concern. "I'm afraid they're no more, boy. That world is dead now," the old man replied, "but you're here now. You might as well make the most of it while you can." "Is the world dead? How am I here? Who are you?" "The name is Kishore Zeldris Schweinerg. But you can call me Zeldris." Naruto stood at the edge of the Nile River, looking down at the distant Valley of the Kings. He was in another dimension, though the concept of dimensional travel was no longer a strange thing, thanks to Kagaya taking him and his team through several dimensions. Despite this knowledge, and having seen some crazy events in his time, there was one singular concept he couldn't grasp. The information he had just received was impossible to believe. He wanted to refuse to believe what the being at his side had told him. He wanted to refuse, but he knew they were telling him the truth. His world, his home, was gone, destroyed, dead. The rabbit goddess had won. Kagaya emerged victorious. Her hands clenched as her body trembled, the words of the being who had introduced himself as Zeldris echoing in her mind. That in the short time after falling through the portal and cradling a dying Sasuke, Kagaya had managed to extinguish all remaining life on her homeworld, including Kakashi and Sakura. The being, who looked like an old man, had offered to take the young ninja to see their corpses, but Naruto refused. It was hard enough even processing the information. If he had to confront the corpses with his own senses, well, Naruto didn't know if his mind would remain intact. Sakura, Kakashi, Ino, Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba. So many of his friends, his precious people, were dead. He didn't even want to imagine what the rabbit goddess had done to them. How she had tortured and mutilated them before murdering them. Naruto was used to carnage, but he could never bear the sight he knew would have greeted him. He took a shaky breath, holding it to force himself to calm down, as he felt his eyes burning. He turned away from the creature and stared into the distant valley, trying and failing to distract himself from the knowledge weighing on him. Naruto tried to breathe again, but choked as his throat felt clog, his stomach weighing as if there were 100 bowls of ramen in it. Why? Why couldn't he keep his promise? I had failed them all. It's okay to cry, son, Zeldris spoke from behind him. It won't do you any good to hold it in. His voice held a note of wisdom, a man speaking from experience. Naruto rubbed his chest, his heart burning as he spoke in halting sentences. I promised you all. I promised you that I would bring peace, that I would end the cycle of hatred, but you're dead. I failed you. He staggered to his feet, consciousness sinking completely, and he fell to his knees, his cheeks quickly turning red and swollen as tears streamed down them. He sank to the ground, curled into a fetal position as he sobbed, tears streaming down the side of his face and onto the grass beneath him. The old man watched with a frown, shifting from side to side for a moment before crouching down beside the boy and placing his hand on his shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. A month later, a dead-eyed Naruto listened to the instructor Zeldris had abandoned him with. He was learning a language called English. Apparently, the old troll had plans to ditch him once again in a country called England in a few months. Not that Naruto cared what he didn't care what was happening in the world around him. He went through the motions mechanically when asked to draw each individual letter of the language's alphabet on a piece of parchment. Uppercase and lowercase. If he felt anything remotely, it was indignation from the exercise. He felt a tingle of frustration at doing something that made him feel like he was a little kid starting his first year at the academy all over again. ABCD. ABCD. The lesson continued until lunchtime, at which point he ate some rather crumbly bread, some vegetables, chicken, and a drink he was told was called beer. Later, he received lessons in etiquette and chivalry in this world. His eyebrows actually twitched at that. He hated those etiquette lessons, which covered a wide range of topics, from table etiquette to chivalric values. The source of his problem. Those strict codes of honor. While studying the relatively recently recorded history of the world, and specifically, its military progression, modern weaponry and formations, and combatants, what he saw rather disheartened him, the opposite of what shinobi warfare used to be. Large battles with marches and maneuvers in formation. It was true that shinobi had large-scale battles with hundreds on each side during wars, and understanding was reached that smaller assault teams won the war. Like what Team 7 was originally supposed to be, a small but well-oiled heavy assault squad that could wreak havoc on the enemy. Minato Namikaze, Kakashi, the three legendary ninja. Hiruzen Sarutobi, they had all been part of the same rotations, and each individual shinobi that came out of such an arrangement could have easily taken on 1,000 run-of-the-mill Chunin and Jounin. These clinically cold thoughts came to him. Perhaps it was the result of Sasuke's influence on him, but he had developed an aversion to this world. When sunset came, he was free to do whatever he wanted, which often meant practicing his shinobi skills. For the most part, it meant that she spent most of the night learning from Sasuke's memories. She learned things like fire and lightning release, shuriken jutsu, and how to activate and deactivate her Sharingan by instinct. The Sharingan had left him with another startling reminder. That no one in this world had chakra. While that enhanced some of the Ai's abilities, such as Genjutsu, it also rendered some of the Ai's abilities, such as copying ninjutsu, useless. Mechanically sipping his tea, Naruto frowned. It also meant he was at a severe disadvantage when it came to fighting mages, as he had learned from the old man that he couldn't see or sense magic in other beings or objects. And while others couldn't sense it either, his limited skill set was a problem. Perhaps once he'd organized all the memories floating around in his mind, he'd find more jutsu to recreate from memory to expand his skill set. At least he still had Kurama. That was a great trump card to hide for now. Boy. And there he was, Zeldris returned after being missing for 3 weeks. Hi. Naruto shouted across the room as he stood up. For the past 6 months, the only thing Naruto had kept and carried with him on his involuntary dimensional travel was his riveted chainmail armor, a gift from Jiraiya during his training trip. Even his kunai pouch had been replaced with sealing arrays glued around his arms. He now dressed in more period-appropriate clothing, a black doublet that served to conceal his armor, trousers, and a pair of leather boots. The 16-year-old boy walked out into the dining room of the house to greet his provider and guardian, his dead eyes meeting a glowing red. Yes, the old bastard was up to something. Standing tall and erect, the vampire began, well, for the past 6 months, I've saved your life. I've fed you, clothed you, and educated you. Naruto nodded and replied, I'm grateful that you looked after me when I was at my worst and saved my life. I owe you a debt. And I've come to collect. The old man replied, before we leave. You're getting married. The blonde raised an eyebrow, curiosity getting the better of him, married. To whom? Zeldris gave him a predatory smile, not even a protest. Well, her name is Artoria Pendragon. Naruto closed his eyes, trying to connect the name. Finally, he gave up and shook his head. I'm so sorry, but I don't recognize that name. Hee. Ah, there you are, Zeldris. A voice called out as they approached a castle that sat at the foot of a mountain. The voice was young, belonging to someone Naruto assumed to be a teenager with long, spiky hair. His soft-cut features made him seem like a rather handsome person, and his purple eyes were an oddly appropriate sight. Merlin. The vampire responded loudly. The now identified teenager, known as Merlin, turned his gaze to the blonde. Is this him? Yes, Naruto Uzumaki, as we discussed earlier. Zeldris replied, placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. The wizard narrowed his eyes before sighing and saying, it doesn't look like much. He could level the entire palace and the mountain in 2 moves. It may not look like it, but there's firepower hiding beneath that sad face of his. Was that pride Naruto felt? Come on, they're waiting. The interior of the fortress was rather spacious, despite how small it seemed from the outside. It was well decorated with paintings, chandeliers, and tapestries. Naruto took note of the various armor on display. It reminded him of the samurai from the Land of Iron. He tuned out the 2 men speaking in English to spy on the hallway they were approaching, which was guarded by 2 men dressed in armor, similar to the display suits Naruto had just passed. Looking out the window toward a courtyard, he noticed a blonde-haired girl, about 13 or 14 years old, wearing a long blue dress with her hair loose. Naruto closed his eyes. She was definitely too young. The teenager closed his eyes. He should probably protest now. Don't back down now, son. Zeldris whispered loud enough for him to hear, to which he replied in his native tongue, she's too young. I assure you he's old enough. Merlin declared from behind him, also speaking his language. Naruto narrowed his eyes, but nonetheless kept his gaze straight ahead. Staring at a blonde-haired blue-eyed teenager dressed in silver and blue armor. Sir K. They're here. The white-haired teen shouted, reverting to English. Naruto gulped, his intense eyes focused on him. Father, is there really no need to change your mind about this? The younger knight asked, seeing Naruto's face. Yes, K, it was an agreement established before we brought Artoria to our home. A word once given must be kept. Sir Hector replied stonily, but he was not happy with the day's proceedings. Ah, Mr. Hector, I am honored to be in your presence. The vampire spoke, his voice as smooth as silk as the man gave a small bow. Likewise, it is an honor to meet one of the Tromagi. Hector replied, turning to the blue-eyed teen and extending his hand as he introduced himself, Sir Hector, one of Lord Pendragon's loyalists, and Artoria's father. Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto introduced himself and looked the older man in the eyes and took his hand firmly. Brave and firm. The knight murmured with an approving nod as he released him. I am Sir K, Artoria's brother. The younger knight chimed in. Naruto looked at him with disinterest and a bored blink as K continued, before you can meet my little sister, I want to fight you, kid. Okay. Naruto heard faintly in the background as he closed his eyes and crossed his arms. After a moment of silence, he replied in his heavily accented English, "No swords fist to fist." The silence in the room was deafening before Naruto's guardian burst out laughing. "I must warn you, Sir Knight, Naruto loves to fight. He may not look like much, but don't underestimate him." Artoria watched from a distance. She knew why Merlin had brought the strange foreign boy, the one with the odd whisker marks on his cheeks. He was her fiancé, soon to be her husband. The 14-year-old sighed to herself. She'd been told this was part of her duty, that one day he would help her free her people. But if she was honest with herself, he didn't look like much. His luxurious-looking clothes made him feel like a pampered nobleman, and something about his eyes made her uncomfortable. She had yet to give him more than a brief glance. Scratch that, he seemed to look right through her. She wondered what had happened to him to have those eyes. The knight and shinobi were left outside after 15 minutes. After all, Sir Kay had wanted to move to something that would put them on more level ground. Dressed in a loose cotton wrestling shirt and loose trousers, the knight faced his opponent, his hands close to his face, somewhat resembling a boxing stance, while his legs were bent at an angle and his feet shoulder-width apart. Naruto, on the other hand, stood in a slightly guarded pose, with his right feet slightly forward and his left feet behind his right about 30 inches apart. He rushed toward his blonde companion, throwing out his hand to punch his opponent in the whiskered face. Naruto, having long ago predicted this move, grabbed his opponent's outstretched limb, whipping his right leg down as he pulled the blue-eyed knight towards him, kneeing the man in the stomach as he stomped on his foot. Naruto used his free arm to shove Kay into the ground from the shoulder of the hand he was holding, twisting said limb behind him. As they fell, Naruto used his leverage to land a knee into his opponent's back. Surrender. Those who didn't know Naruto beforehand watched what happened with wide eyes, except for Merlin, who simply took the results with interest. "I believe this proves that my Naruto here can protect the lady, beyond a shadow of a doubt." Zeldris asked Merlin, who nodded. "I am indeed interested in what the future holds for you, Uzumaki Naruto." "Thank you." "What do you think, Artoria?" Hector asked. "Seems like she knows a thing or two about fighting." It was unchivalrous. "Hey, what was that?" Kay yelled in complaint. "I thought we were going to have a fist fight. You deceitful bastard. How would you like it if I did that to someone you love?" Naruto's eyes flashed with something Artoria couldn't identify before he flashed a big smile at everyone and replied, "Don't worry. My precious friends are strong. Stronger than you." Artoria noticed how his smile grew bigger before saying something that shook her to her core. "Besides, everyone I love is already dead." Chapter 2. Artoria felt apprehensive as one of the castle attendants combed her hair, the door opening and allowing her father to enter. Sir Hector did a small double take before shaking his head and sighing sadly, "You look stunning, my dear." "Thank you, father," the young woman murmured as she approached. The knight who had once served under her father's banner gestured to the servant to give them space and entered to embrace her. "This day came too soon, sooner than I imagined. And definitely sooner than I wanted." "I know, but it's my duty," Artoria reminded him. "I must free Britannia one day." Merlin said he was a strong warrior. He proved it. "Have you two talked yet?" Sir Hector asked, letting go of him. "No, we never seem to cross paths enough to talk beyond a simple greeting." The blonde-haired girl paused for a moment. "I often get the feeling he's avoiding me." The old gentleman shook his head sadly and said, "I spoke to the young man a few moments ago. He's a good boy. I think he'll look after you, as much as I hate what's happening." As Naruto walked towards the small chapel near the main fortress, he fought to calm his nerves. He was about to marry someone he didn't know, a complete stranger, a boy. While the age gap between them was only 2 years, Artoria Pendragon being 14 and he being 16, the difference in experience for the two was as far apart as the sun and the earth he stood on. From what he had observed, she still acted like a child who had yet to see the horrors that filled the world. Her eyes darkened for a moment before a voice broke him from his reverence. "Naruto." Sir Kay shouted as the young knight dressed in his finest armor caught up with him. Naruto gave him a nod of acknowledgement. "Kay-san. Listen, I think it's pretty clear that you and I don't get along, but no matter who I try to talk to, it seems like everyone's focused on the wedding, so please take care of Artoria, she means a lot to me." Naruto's face took on a hint of sadness. He was disgusted with the whole thing. If he hadn't been honor-bound to repay the old vampire, he would never have agreed to this irresponsible act. His mind returned to the whole affair with the 12 fire guardians and his old friend Sora. It had once been his duty, as shinobi of the leaf, to protect the next generation. He reflected on the fact that he had already failed everyone back home. Leaving his world without a future, but based on what little he had been told, the girl he would marry had a duty to free the people who had become oppressed under her uncle's tyrannical rule. Just like Princess Koyuki and the Land of Snow. Could he ever trust himself with someone's life again? Suddenly, an image of his silver-haired sensei appeared in his mind. Someone who had lost everything and still kept going, trying to be the best person he could be. That was Kakashi sensei. He may have always been late and a lazy pervert, but he was there when it mattered most. A small spark rekindled within him and he felt something familiar once again. Had he really let his will of fire die out? It truly was a failure, but no more. He would not fail again. Suddenly, he felt a chill and found himself looking into the worried face of Artoria's brother. Tell me you will protect Artoria. Naruto grabbed the man by the wrist, putting on a fake smile, but spoke genuinely as he assured, don't worry, I won't let him hurt your sister, you have my word. Looks like you're finally coming back to your senses. Kurama's voice came to her mind, their bond seemingly coming to life once more. Sorry Kurama, seems I almost got lost. That's what you did, brat, that's what you did. The tailed beast replied, before Naruto felt an awkward silence. So I'm getting married. Previously arranged of course by the old bastard. Naruto informed her. But Kurama blurted out in surprise, now I have to see this. I won't bring a mountain-sized demon fox with 9 even bigger tails into this small castle. Fine, I'll bear the embarrassment of taking the size of a small dog, I need to see you act like a fool with my own eyes, the Biju said, trying to sound indignant. Naruto stopped on the steps of the chapel, causing Kei to stop as well. We're missing one guest, come out Kurama. Naruto punched the stone floor and with a puff of smoke, an orange-furred fox with 9 fluffy tails the size of a German shepherd appeared. FA degrees JZ and Line Najim, it's nice to smell the fresh air once again, Kurama said as he sniffed the air around him. Superscript 38PWFWGDN Fode, I'm glad to see you enjoy stretching your paws, Naruto replied with a smile. Ah, I almost forgot about the fox. Zeldris spoke, approaching behind Naruto, Kei, and Kurama. Hey, Kyuubi, I have a gift for you. Close your eyes. Zeldris spoke, causing the fox to narrow his eyes, but he remained silent. The old man scratched the back of his head, laughing, before speaking again, oh, that's right, you don't speak English. IXF, close your eyes. Kurama growled, turning to Naruto and saying, I don't trust him. Shaking his head, Naruto replied, just do as he says, trust me. There's no point in fighting him. The orange-furred fox closed its eyes in curiosity and lowered its head. The vampire approached his victim with a twinkle in his eye and quickly placed a collar around the Biju. Kurama opened his eyes in panic when he felt the collar and shouted, hey Naruto. He didn't just do what I think he did. This guy didn't just put the collar on me, did he? Oh, he's so dead. I can understand that. Kei pointed out, a talking fox with 9 tails. Tell me, Naruto, this isn't a joke, right? Shut up, human. I am the mighty Kurama. The strongest of the 9-tailed beasts, damn it. The fox yelled in frustration. That's a translation collar, you mangy beast. So others can understand you. The vampire spoke, how do you expect to be the best man at my office without being able to speak the language the bride and her family speak? The Kyuubi leveled that man with a snarl as he flexed his chakra, a red aura tinging the air around him, causing Naruto to chime in, Kurama, I think it's best you use it in the presence of these people. LGBUC, pretend it's a mission. Fine, the fox relented, but I'm only doing this for you, Naruto. Zeldris's eyes glowed red as he spoke in a loud whisper, that's what I thought. Sir Hector and Merlin soon approached the four. Merlin simply raised an eyebrow as Hector asked, what is this? My name is Kurama, human, don't treat me like a thing. The Biju replied without dignity. Once again, Naruto chimed in, Kurama here is my oldest companion, he's bonded to my soul, since birth. He'll be by my side for the wedding, if it's not a problem. I see, Antor acknowledged, well then, I only came to inform you that my dear daughter will be here soon, with Merlin here officiating the ceremony. If you would be so kind, please head inside the chapel. Naruto nodded, motioning for Kurama to follow him. Merlin looked at Sir Kei, do you still disapprove? That's my sister we're talking about, the knight growled. Even if in the long run he could bring her happiness? The flower magician asked. That drew a snort from the teenager. If he makes her happy, so be it. But I doubt they will be. Artoria stood beside her husband-to-be, who seemed to have tuned out the ceremony. She looked at him, noticing his stony face, but his eyes were still blankly staring into the distance. The strange multi-tailed fox seemed to be paying more attention to the wedding than the groom, and she was almost offended by the fact. Almost. There seemed to be something that always bothered him the few times they met. Some conflict in his eyes before he took on a glazed look and walked away. As the wedding ceremony came to an end, there was one thing that would seal their fate. The groom may kiss the bride. Words spoken by Merlin. Naruto turned to look at her, and actually looked at her for once, looking uncomfortable. When he leaned in, he paused for a moment before turning his head so that when their lips finally touched, he was at the edge of her lip. He had avoided kissing her as a husband should kiss his wife. That was a blow to her pride, one that would go unanswered for the time being. When the fox creature rose from its sitting position and walked toward her, placing a paw on her dress as it spoke, I'm so sorry you're stuck with an Uzumaki, even more so with this particular idiot. That brought a giggle from her as the animal's owner shouted indignantly in the strange foreign language he spoke. Soon Zeldris left and Merlin followed him, leaving 4 people and a fox to enjoy the wedding dinner. Dinner was painfully awkward and silent for the most part. Of the 4 blondes at the table, the shinobi of the group barely touched his dinner. His mind was racing, trying to process the fact that he had just gotten married. However, to a stranger. There was a change as the utensils on his plate flew out of place as Kurama snarled at him, "Naruto. Get out of there." "Kurama?" Naruto asked, while the other occupants of the table watched the development with interest. "You're still acting pathetic." The fox glared at him. "Where is the man who took on every challenge head on? The boy who never let anything get him down? The person whose sheer stupidity and bravery allowed him to defeat enemies twice his strength and turn detractors into allies?" "That boy died 6 months ago," Naruto replied. "No, she faced reality and couldn't cope. You failed, right? You were bound to fail at some point. You're only human, Naruto." The furry animal turned its head toward its girlfriend. "This is your chance to right your wrongs. She's strong, don't keep her waiting too long." Naruto closed his eyes as the fox got off the table and walked away. "I apologize but I don't feel very well," Naruto said before standing up and walking away. Artoria spent the entire night waiting for Naruto, wanting to finish the part she dreaded most. Sharing a marriage bed. That was something not even her father had prepared her for. A small furry creature known as Kurama had passed by his room and settled at the foot of his bed. When she asked him why, he opened one eye and said, "Neither you nor he are ready to take that step. We come from a place where culturally, things like arranged marriages aren't something that exist in the public mind. It was inconceivable, and I know my human sacrifice better than anyone. The fact that you lack the life experience he has makes you a child in his mind. No wonder he's repulsed by the idea of sharing a bed, let alone a room, with a child." The fact that he had called Naruto a human sacrifice flew over her head versus being called a child. "I'm an adult, you know. Do you have a shinobi license?" Kurama asked, closing his eyes. "What's that?" "The laws that limit the nation we come from, that makes you a child," Kyuubi replied. Artoria snorted as she asked, "Why are you here then?" "Naruto promised that brother of yours that he would protect you. So he asked me to stay with you." The fox replied, "Now sleep. You've had a long day, brat." Naruto lay down, perched on a tree branch. He could have returned to the room he'd been given. But he wasn't comfortable with that. He missed the fresh air. It was relaxing, not being surrounded by unfamiliar stone walls. He checked once more that the rope used to keep him secure was taut and rested his head against the trunk. He pondered his next course of action. What would Kakashi-sensei have done? Kakashi would have made the best of his situation in his own way, Naruto rationalized. He would treat Artoria well. The first step would be to make friends with the girl. Yes, that would be a good first step. Morning came fairly early, and he found himself deep in the forest surrounding the castle. He stood by the lake. Although the sage's gift had allowed him to understand the nature of the chakras, he still felt the need to practice them. Which led him to his current situation, trying to recreate an AR rank water jutsu entirely from his own memory. 53 hand signs. Naruto recited them from memory as he slowly skimmed through them. Ushi seru una itori ushi yuma tori na tora inu tora mi ushi hitsuji mi hitsuji na gen seru tori tatsu tori ushi yuma hitsuji tora mi na seru ui. He felt the currents beneath him shift as he gently guided them with his chakra, a whirlpool as wide as he was forming around his back. Beads of sweat rolled down his face as he concentrated, pulling the dragon's head out of the water. The delicate control he maintained over the technique as he completed the last of the Tatsu Hitsuji no Ushi Hitsuji Toriji no Itori seals. Suddenly, he lost his focus when he heard a loud gasp, and the dragon's head, which had been raised significantly, exploded in a shower of water. Arg. Naruto opened one eye as he laboriously caught his breath. There was Artoria's mouth agape at his soaked clothes. "I'm sorry," Naruto said apologetically as he walked back to the shore, retrieved his shirt and swimsuit, which were also soaked, and put them on, before moving towards her, scratching the back of his neck. "I was practicing a technique I don't know. I'm still not in control." "I can see that," the blonde-haired girl said. "Breakfast is about to start being served, we should change beforehand." Artoria Naruto began, causing the 14-year-old to look at him. He looked away uncomfortably. "Are my belongings still in my room?" "Yes, why wouldn't they be?" the chivalrous girl replied without understanding. Blinking in surprise, the boy continued, "Oh, thanks, I just wanted to know. By the way, I hope we can be friends. I know neither of us had a choice in this. And I haven't taken the time to properly introduce myself. I haven't in myself since, well, that's for another time. Naruto, whatever's bothering you, I hope you can learn to trust me, we are married after all." Artoria reciprocated, before turning to walk back to the small castle. "What's your dream?" Naruto asked out of nowhere, causing the girl to stop mid-step and turn around. "Why do you want to know?" "There's a lot you can learn about a person by listening to them talk about what they want," Naruto stated. I want to free my people from the Saxons and my uncle's oppression, she finally replied, determination shining through her emerald green eyes. The shinobi closed his eyes for a second before nodding approvingly. He walked over to her and grabbed her shoulder as he whispered, don't forget to guide them once they're free, just like you. Artoria stood motionless in her place as she watched him walk towards the fortress. Sir Hector, Naruto asked curiously as he sat down in a chair across from the elderly knight who sat behind his own desk. The two were in his personal study where he held more private meetings, in a more secluded part of the castle. The old knight sighed as he picked up a scroll, the scripture Artoria's father had left as a dowry. A precaution taken years ago if King Uther's secret child had been born a girl. Which, of course, had been the case. This is Artoria's dowry that her father set aside for her wedding. The old man passed with great difficulty. Naruto frowned at that, I don't want to sound like a buffoon, but what is a dowry? Hector's shoulders slumped heavily as he answered the question, adding his 2 cents in the process, it's either property or money that the wife brought to her husband. However, it's something I felt I had to hide from Artoria, she's already burdened by this, I didn't want her to think I had to buy her marriage as well. The blonde boy's face turned stony as he asked, is this what marriage is like in these parts? A woman who has to buy her way to a good future. Where is the love? The pursuit of happiness? Naruto paused to take a deep breath, reaching out to stop the man from speaking as he continued, I can't accept this. Please give it, whatever it is, to Artoria. I felt like enough of a thief stealing her right to choose who she married. The silence was deafening before Hector brought a hand to his eyes, I am worried for the child's future. The prophecy looms over her, I know I cannot protect her forever when I first took her in, Merlin warned me that a day would come when she would have to marry a certain someone, a man from a different world, if she wished to avoid a dark fate. I hate to prophecy, Naruto said as his hair shadowed his eyes, a sage told my godfather that he would train a child, destined to either destroy or save the shinobi world I came from the same sage would later appear before me and declare me, the child of the prophecy. I chose to save the world I believed in. Despite my choice to save it, for all the power I had the world was still destroyed. I carry the burden of failure, the deaths of my dear friends. I watched my brother die in my arms, I didn't even have the guts to bury the woman I loved or my master. I never recovered the bodies of my countrymen, our allies who stood together until the end of time. Naruto stood up from his seat but looked his father-in-law in the eye, eyes bleeding red as he activated his Sharigan. I promise you, Lord Hector, whatever the contents of the prophecy that awaits you, I will not let it come to pass. I do not know Artoria Pendragon, I cannot claim to love her. For my heart belongs to someone else, until I can properly grieve, but I will protect her, and I will not fail. So when my date with death comes, I can look into the eyes of my family, my friends, my leaders and allies, while I await judgment. Merlin mentioned you were from another world. I suppose he wasn't lying. Was all the old knight could say, seeing the fire in her eyes. It was like when she chose to follow Uther. I believe in you, Naruto. For Artoria's sake, I will. Nodding, Naruto asked as he prepared to leave, where can I find Merlin? I need to contact Zeldris, he's the only one who can help me retrieve the tool I need to become strong enough so I never fail again. Why are you here, Uzumaki? Merlin asked in his native tongue, the shinobi wasting no time as he walked past, I need to know where Zeldris is. Getting more and more sorry, aren't you? You know you can't. Merlin began only to be interrupted. I regret nothing, you damned bastard. I don't know what you and Zeldris had arranged between you, since you've apparently been anticipating my arrival for who knows how long. But I won't let you, or anyone else, subject that child to a life of suffering. And why do you care, failed hero? As soon as he asked, he was right in her face. Red and black eyes, ready for a fight, glared at him menacingly. The teen had a kunai ready at the ready, causing the mage to sneer as he wiped his nose to see if it was bleeding, but thankfully it wasn't. So fast it was wild. Call Zeldris, whatever this dark future you predicted for Artoria is. I won't let it come to pass. I'll do what I should have done a long time ago. Naruto ordered forcefully once again. He closed his eyes as he stood on the threshold of what had once been his home. His face was dark as he moved across the rooftops and alleys directly toward his house. Refusing to look at the carnage around him, he finally returned to his apartment. Standing in front of his old house, a bittersweet smile formed on his face. He didn't even have the decency to lock the door while he went off to war. Forcing down the bile rising in his throat, he moved to where his room had once been. There, on the nightstand, was a box made of oak wood. She opened the box, tears beginning to slide down her eyes as the memories began to resurface, bile returning as she brought a knuckle to her teeth and bit down. There was the last gift Kakashi had given her. The white lightsaber. If I had a son, I would have wanted him to be like you, Naruto. The weight of those words hit him full force as he remembered how Kakashi had pushed him away after the destruction the pain had brought, how they had found some time to talk as teacher and student. Flashback. The crater that was Konoha was slowly recovering from its wound. The village was slowly rebuilding after the tragic Akatsuki attack. Construction work was everywhere, with carpenters, engineers, plumbers, architects, and a certain style of woodworking using Anbu. Everyone was trying to do their part, trying to rebuild the village and restore their livelihoods. Kakashi approached Naruto, who sat down to take a break after a hard day's work. The Jounin carried a brown wooden box by his side. "Hey Naruto. I want to talk to you," the silver-haired man called out. "Sure, Kakashi-sensei, what's up?" Naruto replied as he stood up and stretched. "Why don't you follow me?" The two walked in silence towards the forest. Kakashi wanted, after all, the same lush green landscape that he had when he was given the gift he brought. Once they came to a river near the path they were taking, they sat down near the bank. "I brought a gift for you, for defeating pain," Kakashi said as he handed the eyebrow box to the blonde genin. "Why don't you go ahead and open it?" Naruto carefully took the box and opened the latch, finding a small tantem inside. Naruto took it as he inspected the craftsmanship, paying attention to Kakashi as he spoke. "This is the white lightsaber. I know you know from Lady Chiyo that the white fang of the blade was my father, he was stronger than the 3 legendary ninja. This was his weapon." Kakashi Naruto began but was interrupted by a smile in his eyes. "When my father passed this sword to me before his death, he asked me to pass it down to my children Naruto. I don't think I have any children of my own. So I want you to have it. I know I wasn't the best sensei to you 3. However, you've grown a lot, perhaps after we're done with Akatsuki, I can teach you how to wield it properly." The lump formed in his throat as Naruto placed the weapon. "If I had a son, I would have wanted him to be like you, Naruto." Kakashi finished, and Naruto couldn't hold it back as he gave the Jounin a crushing hug and sobbed with happiness. End of retrospective. Naruto took the weapon and left his apartment, his mind set on a few destinations, the Hokage Tower, the Anbu facilities, and the clan compounds. As he walked there, he was joined by a certain vampire who asked, "Have you found what you're looking for?" "Part of it." After hours of rummaging, with a scroll in his hand containing everything he wanted to take, Naruto finally allowed himself to look at the carnage. From the top of the Hokage monument he saw everything. His face was solemn as he stood silently in the company of his guardian. His eyes were closed as he simply felt the air around him. "I promise I will never rely on the power of others. From now on, I will develop my own strength." She was met with silence as she opened her eyes once more, memorizing what she saw. "I will never forget my failure. I ask all of you, all those I failed, please forgive me. I was not strong enough to save all of you, who gave your lives in vain. If I could do it over again, I swear it would be different. But now, I gave my word that I will not let the same thing happen again. Please, spirits of my ancestors. Spirits of my friends, family. Pray that I may find the strength within me so I can earn your forgiveness." He encountered a calm wind as he looked into the distance. Suddenly, he felt calm wash over him. When he turned to Zeldris, I think I've made my peace. "Aren't you forgetting something, son?" The man pointed toward the tree of God that rose above the horizon. The blond man shook his head. "No, let those who remain dream of a better world. You said it yourself, this world was dead. It's best to respect it." "Is that your final decision, boy?" the wizard asked. Let's go, we'll never come back to this place." Chapter 3. Merlin, the flower wizard, in London at midnight, pointed his staff at the ground as a marble stone appeared in the middle of the churchyard and embedded itself deeply within it a sword. He gave it one last look. The bishop would summon the Lord, and within a week, everyone would be trying to draw the sword and become king of Britannia. Little did they know. The future king-queen actually had already chosen for them. The magician walked away, disappearing into the night. He gave her one last look before vanishing completely, leaving no witnesses to the supposed miracle that would be buzzing around the rumor mill in the morning. The married couple sat in the wife's room, one of the occupants, a blonde teenager with golden hair and blue eyes, looked at the other occupant, his wife, a paler blonde teenager with captivating green eyes. Naruto watched as Artoria tried to put her hair into a tight bun, causing him to ask curiously, "What are you doing?" "As you know, being a woman, I'm at a natural disadvantage. Merlin prophesied a king, not a queen. Artoria reports, so I'm disguising myself." Naruto frowned and protested, "I hate prophets and people like him. Artoria, if you have the guts to work for it and never give up, you can achieve anything you want. You shouldn't disguise yourself as something you are, just to please other people. Besides, it would be a shame for them to not see your natural beauty." The green-eyed teenager blushed and looked away upon hearing her compliment for the first time, but protested weakly, "But the gentlemen won't side with me if I appear as a woman." "Nonsense, they'll be tripping over themselves to support your cause. And if they wish to oppose you, well, I am a professional assassin, after all," the blonde says with a wink. "You're joking, Uzumaki," the Pendragonaire mocked, "but if you truly believe it, then I will become the Queen of Britain." "Okay, be yourself, don't let anyone tell you who you need." "Thank you Naruto." The city of London bustled with activity as peasants and nobles walked the streets. It was a big week for the metropolis. A marble stone with a sword embedded in it appeared out of nowhere in the church square, along with the inscription, "Whoever draws this sword from the stone shall be rightfully crowned King of Great Britain." The bishop of the church had called all those present who had witnessed the miracle that morning to the cathedral and celebrated mass, after which he had lined up the men and asked them to try to pull the sword from the stone. Word spread, and within a week nobles, knights, and peasants of all stripes had traveled to the city to try to claim the sword and the throne of Britain for themselves. Children and adults alike placed bets, and even some brave women tried their best to pull the sword from the stone, but none succeeded. This was the activity that awaited Artoria Pendragon and her family as they walked through the streets. The mass began at the peak of the sun, and her father suggested that they should attend before trying with the sword. Not that she was worried, Merlin had told her that the sword was her birthright. Of course, as she noticed every time they entered a settlement, Naruto, her absurd husband, who insisted they should get to know each other first before calling him her husband, decided to disappear. She knew he was nearby, watching her from a distance, and the moment she was in danger, she knew he'd be there too. The mark on the back of her neck guaranteed it. After mass, the people of London dispersed. Some to watch a jousting tournament near the western entrance to the city, others to see who was the bravest soul trying this new entertainment. Soon, a pit formed in her stomach as nervousness began to creep in. She stood nearby as she watched a group of knights attempt to claim what was rightfully theirs. "Don't be shy." A familiar hidden voice whispered in her ear, "You have what it takes to be a fine leader, Artoria. Go, claim the sword, show them their queen." Artoria nodded, still nervous. But she knew, despite all his flaws, how often he treated her like a child, how he hurt her pride by not treating her the way a man treats his wife. She still supported her and promised to help her achieve her dream. Slowly, the blonde, green-eyed girl walked toward the sword in the stone, attracting the attention of many curious passers-by as they bet against each other. He gripped the hilt and moved it slowly from side to side. At first it was solid, but soon he felt it loosen as he moved it, and then the sword came loose from the stone when he gave it a tug. In front of many witnesses. Whispers began around him, some in amazement, some in disbelief, many in doubt. Soon, the bishop, nobles, and knights surrounded her, talking loudly over one another. Once again, her shinobi came to her rescue, shouting silence. And there he was, no longer wearing his expensive doublet, but a brown gambeson, along with a matching hooded cloak and leather boots. Of course, as I had come to expect, the hood was raised to hide his foreign appearance. "What's your name?" And of course, I was going to act like I didn't know her. "Artoria Pendragon," she replied, playing along with his little game. "Pendragon, a daughter of Uther Pendragon, King of Britain before Voltringen?" he asked. She briefly glimpsed his eyes and saw him wink at her. "Yeah." There was a collective gasp and angry whisper as the revelation of who she was broke out. Naruto did the one thing she never expected him to do, removing the saber he treasured so dearly and kneeling as he handed it to her. "My family suffers under the pretender's reign. The stone says that whoever draws the sword must lead Britain. I give you my sword and my loyalty if you wish to free the people. Long live the queen." Had this really occurred to him? This was so unlike him that he paused for a moment, watching the others look at her expectantly. But he gripped the sword tighter as he promised, "I will fight my uncle, a usurper of the British people and a tyrant, alongside the Saxons, and I will create a better Britain for us all." Merlin appeared out of nowhere as he spoke. "It seems Britain finally has a queen. Artoria Pendragon, daughter of King Uther." The plaza was silent for several minutes. Before his brother and father, who had been watching, ready to interfere at any moment, he knelt and repeated Naruto's words. "Long live the queen." Others soon joined in. Many wished the new leader's longevity until the first of the detractors spoke up. "So as not to ruin the moment, why should we make you our queen? You are a stranger, inexperienced and unwise. A child with no life experience. Well, the people suffer day by day and the nobles neglect us, the poor commoners, leaving us in the smaller villages defenseless against the Saxon hordes." "Excuse me?" Artoria asked, "What is your name?" "Thomas, from Old Lindsay, a settlement near the Barrows," the man replied. "I see an area that would be where the Saxons are currently building their forts, right?" the green-eyed teen asked. He received a nod, causing him to clear his throat. "Those who lend their support, we will begin our campaign within 3 weeks. Please send your men, or if you wish to volunteer, I will stay with Sir Ector at his estate. There, we will plan to face the Saxon threat first. It is true that I currently lack experience. But I promise. But I will strive earnestly to create a kingdom where no man, woman, or child sheds tears or fears the raids of invaders or suffers the tyranny of men like Voltringen." After leaving London City and returning to the estate, the now young queen collapsed as she asked her blonde companion, "Naruto, why did you do that?" Well, the people clearly weren't convinced. So, a little push in the right direction was needed. The Jinchuriki replied, before turning serious, "Artoria. I've avoided bringing it up until now. But now you're queen, you'll soon be leading men to war, against the Saxons, against your uncle. I know, but it has to be done, she replied wearily. Don't cling to the code of chivalry you hold so dear, Naruto said without pause, narrowing his eyes, it will only get you killed. Excuse me? The girl exploded, abandon my code of chivalry. Are you crazy, you low-life buffoon? Explain yourself. I told you once, he'll get you and your men killed, the Uzumaki replied as he rested his head on his hand. I'd rather die than abandon the code of honor. Without chivalry, what separates a knight from a common brute? Artoria asked, unsure why she was getting heated. Artoria, you can't be a child forever, you're a leader now. Naruto began only for her to stand up and yell at him, well then stop treating me like a child. You insult me by suggesting that I should abandon what I was raised to believe in. If you can throw something like that away so easily, it's no wonder you failed everyone. As soon as he said those words, her eyes widened and her hands went to her mouth as she saw him give her the coldest look she'd ever seen. And in the blink of an eye, he was gone. Knowing he was wrong, he immediately escaped from the room they had just occupied, grabbed his sword and armor, and headed into the forest, intending to find him and apologize for his transgression. She didn't find him in any of her usual spots and decided to investigate further in the woods. The further she went, the more unsure she became, but she swallowed her insecurities and forced herself to continue searching. She searched for hours and hours, high and low, but never found him. Stepping on a branch that made a loud crack under her foot, she cried, Naruto. Please come back. The sound of leaves crunching under the weight of the moving beings alerted her that something was wrong, as 12 fur-clad individuals carrying various weapons made their presence known as they began to surround her, speaking in a language unknown to her, but she clearly knew what they were doing. Saxons. She also realized that they were talking about her in a rather libertine manner, by the way they pointed and laughed. Suddenly, the man who assumed he was the leader spoke in broken English. Little girl, give it up. Become a boar. We give you pleasure. He grimaced in disgust as he raised his sword in a neutral guard, slowly pivoting on his feet to keep all of his opponents within visible range. The man ordered an attack and they all came at her at once. She ducked and jumped away from the attack as the man reached out to try to surround her once more. One of the Saxons raised his mace high and lunged at her, but she threw her sword in front of her, hoping to drive it through his stomach, but by pure instinct, she was forced to roll away as 2 other Saxons tried to flank her. It immediately became clear to her that she couldn't flee, as she didn't know which direction was safe. Nor that she could take on all the opponents alone, even while boosting herself through her mana burst. As fast and tough as she was. Every time she tried to block, they were stronger than her, forcing her to evade. Unfortunately for her, she couldn't pay attention to where she was and soon fell. She tried to protect herself with her sword, waving her arm. But exhaustion from the journey, the search for her estranged husband, and the current turmoil slowed her down, and the sword fell from her hand. She closed her eyes as the images flashed through her mind, fear creeping into her heart of what they would do to her. The song of 1,000 birds filled the air, and the cries of many voices forced her to open her eyes. She gasped, here was the one man she had been looking for, his hand piercing the chest of the bandit leader, crackling with lightning. The bandit stepped back, and Naruto looked at the savages with a hardened face, before turning to her and smiling, sorry I'm late, I got lost along the way. Naruto threw one of his kunai at one of the bandits who dodged, but he disappeared from his place, appearing next to the man, and with a chakra saber in his hand, he opened his jugular. Artoria watched the sickening sight as her husband, there was a feeling in her heart as she thought these words, brutally slaughtered the men who wanted to harm her. Standing up, not wanting to feel useless, she grabbed her sword and quickly rushed to his side, blocking the bandit who had tried to attack him from behind, and slashed his face before she stabbed him in the neck, thinking nothing of her behavior. Naruto turned to see what he had just done and looked at her with a worried face, Ardo. He decided to end it right then and there as he quickly made his way to where his newly marked kunai was lying and threw it at the feet of one of the few remaining men, quickly using the momentum to kill them. Teleporting in front of his victim meant stabbing the bandit in the heart, picking up his kunai, coating it in wind chakra, throwing it at one who tried to flee, teleporting once more to the kunai and lunging at the last remaining Saxon, slicing him through the neck. When he returned to the side of the girl he had been forced to marry, he dropped his weapons to the ground and hugged her. The shock of her first death began to sink in, and she burst into tears at the fact that she had just taken her first life. Even if it was someone who wanted to steal her innocence. Naruto comforted the 14, soon-to-be 15-year-old, it's okay, everything will be okay. He was scum anyway, he didn't deserve to live. He held her for hours until her sobs subsided, she had become a mess compared to the prim and proper girl he had always had. I'm sorry. She muttered between hiccups, clutching his cloak tightly, the closeness she felt dizzying. How her hero comforted her. There was a change in her, in the way she viewed the man who had saved her life. He apologized once more, and then again and again. Even though each time he apologized would be fine, she felt small. And she needed the comfort. Once she calmed down, she asked him why he had come, and he smiled at her. "You were missing for a while, it is still my duty and my promise to protect you. I only used the mark I left on you to blink you away. Luckily I arrived in time to save you." She thanked him once more and, to his surprise, squealed as he picked her up, carrying her like a damsel in distress as he leaped through the foliage, seeking out the tallest pine tree. From her place in his arms, she could see the full moon and the expanse of the forest in the distance. Artoria Pendragon felt the change deepen as her heart began to race as she shifted her gaze to his. He carried her all the way back to the castle, and once he was in the safety of the hallway to his chambers, he noticed it was time for bed. Naruto left her by her door and wished her good night. But in a burst of bravery, she tugged at his sleeve, letting her hormones guide her as she wrapped her hands around his neck. "What are you doing?" the blue-eyed blonde asked about her actions. She closed the distance between them, standing on her tiptoes, and whispered, "Thanking my hero properly," and kissed him. Once she pulled away, she saw the bewilderment in his eyes and claimed another, to which he responded better, using his thumb and forefinger to gently grasp his chin, breaking the kiss and placing one more on his nose. "Go to sleep, we'll talk about this in the morning." She nodded, and with one last chaste kiss, she pulled away, entering her room. She closed the door behind her, and after removing her armor, Artoria crashed onto the bed. When the rush of emotions faded, she realized what she had done. Dizziness and apprehension in equal measure took over her mind, and she hugged her pillow tightly, thinking about the day's events. It had been difficult, exhausting. Maybe the reason she'd criticized something so childish was because she knew he meant well. Despite having insulted him in the harshest way, he'd been there to save her life. Tracing his lips with her finger, she noticed he hadn't flinched, as she thought he would. A wide smile appeared on her lips, thinking that something so silly could make her feel like a little girl. That night he dreamed of a future of liberation, standing atop his own castle with a certain person by his side. Yes, Artoria wanted nothing more than to keep dreaming. Chapter 4. Naruto stretched in his seat as he looked at the piece of scroll. The Harem formula was a brilliant piece of sealing that Tobirama had come up with, but unfortunately, his prototype was just that, a prototype. Even for someone like Naruto, who, though trained by Jiraiya, wasn't particularly a genius seal master like his father, he could still quickly break down the formula into its individual components. This had allowed him to roughly alter the Senju formula so that it responded to his chakra. But it still wasn't what his father's jutsu had been. Now Naruto knew very well that he would never be able to decipher the yellow flash Shiki formula. The man had created his own sealing method, and sadly, the only two people with that knowledge died on the day he was born. Then, he would have to invent his own way to improve the technique. As he looked at his father's kunai and holder on his desk, he contemplated the first part of his new Shiki. Matching Minato's teleportation speed. There was a knock at her door. She looked out the window and saw that it was already morning, knowing who was trying to get into her room. "Come in," he shouted, "it's open." The door opened to reveal a shy Artoria, who quickly entered and closed the door behind her. He observed her appearance, fresh with a new set of clothes, sporting a slight blush on her cheeks. "Tomorrow," she whispered as she walked toward him. The mustachioed teenager recognized her, motioning for her to come closer. "How was your night?" "It was nice," the green-eyed girl replied, a pleased smile forming on her lips. She walked slowly toward him and noticed several diagrams on his desk, along with a strange three-bladed knife on the edge. "What is that?" he asked curiously. "My father's Harem kunai," he replied as he pushed his chair back a little. He had been working on the formula all night with little progress. "Father?" Artoria whispered. It was the first time she'd heard him say anything about his past, other than that everyone he'd ever loved was dead, and he blamed himself for it. Yes, they called him the Yellow Flash. The man was legendary, feared and revered throughout the 5 great nations. Naruto continued, chuckling for a moment. Legends say he wiped out 1,000 Iwa ninja in the blink of an eye at the Battle of Kanabi Bridge. Turning what was almost a certain defeat for my village into a victory that was respected even after his death. Artoria blinked, killing so many people in one moment turned the tide of a war. But he was beyond legendary. Naruto's voice brought her out of her thoughts. He was a prodigy that came only once in a generation. He was so genius that he created his own sealing method, becoming the youngest Hokage to reign. I wanted to be like him when I grew up. He was the opposite of everything I was. There was a cheerful laugh as her smile turned bitter. To think that he was my father, the village's hero, the greatest Hokage to ever grace the Hidden Leaf. The man who sacrificed his life for his village versus a clanless loser that no one wanted. Naruto took the kunai in his hand and began to spin it, but thanks to his own genius and later the help of an unexpected ally. I got to meet him and my mother, even though they died the day I was born. It was the happiest I've ever been. I was so happy I forgot to ask if they left a note about their stupid sealing method. That drew a laugh from Artoria as she slapped her thigh, a signal for her to sit, while he wrapped an arm around her waist and used his free hand to display a complex diagram. This is the original formula for the technique, created by the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. The ceiling here is cool, but outdated and very basic. Raising his father's kunai once more, he gestured to the strange symbol on it. My father was able to condense that. The blonde paused to point to the blueprint before drawing the Hiraition knife once more into this. This is far too complex for me, and I'll probably never figure it out. Placing the knife on the ground, the blue-eyed teen held up a piece of parchment with some strange lines on it. These are the individual components of my version of the technique. Now I have to figure out how to put them together, so not only will I get faster, I'll also sense whenever you're in danger. I don't want to leave it to chance again. Artoria grabbed each of their cheeks, so they made eye contact. You saved my life, that's all that matters to me. 8 months since I came to this world. 2 months since I met you. Naruto began, I'm physically attracted to you, I like you. But I'm very afraid. I'll make a mistake like my sensei, Kakashi, and end up with your blood on my hands. I'm afraid that allowing myself to have these feelings for you will get you killed. There it was, Artoria noticed, the fear in his eyes real. She could see the tears building up as he tried to hold back, summoning her courage, which seemed to have fled her, and kissed him. As he left, the future queen embraced him lovingly and said, I'm not going to die. Much less at your hands. I know I'll never be able to understand what you're going through, the pain you must feel. But I promise you I'll always be here. And I promise I won't fail you, Naruto promised as well, hugging her. He wasn't sure if he loved her yet, but he had strong feelings of attraction for the beauty he clung to and affection. They hugged for a while, until Artoria raised her head to ask, how long have you been working on this? All night. Naruto replied, a yawn escaping his lips. The chivalrous girl frowned, that's not good for your health. Come on, you need to sleep. I don't need sleep. Sleep is for the weak and for beautiful people like you. Naruto said jokingly only to receive a glare. Pausing for a moment to think, Artoria asked, Naruto, are you suffering from night terrors? The silence he gave her was all she needed as she sat down and pulled him out of his chair. The two of them fell onto the bed as she hugged him, sleep. I'll chase away the terrors. What if your dad or brother walks in? Naruto asked, shifting his position so he was cuddling her. This isn't like we're naked. Besides, we're married, aren't we? It's only a wife's duty to protect her husband from his pain and share a bed, the knight replied. I guess you're right, wife, the ninja finally relented. 4 years later. Disguised inside a wine cellar, Naruto sipped while listening to the people of Lancaster talk and go on their merry way. It had been a year since Artoria finally put an end to Voltringen's rule. The combined power of her prowess and his own crushing army after army in every battle was unstoppable. It had also been 3 years since construction began on Camelot after the Saxons were expelled from England. After a few battles, they had settled the English disputes with the Welsh, although the barbarians known as the Scots in the Northern Highlands really seemed to want an Uzumaki way to overcome the frequency with which the tribes and clans seemed to clash with the English. As she put down her glass, she let out a nostalgic sigh. The Civil War had been swift. So had the campaign against the Saxons. Camelot was progressing very well, and Artoria threw herself into her role as leader, leading the Britons through thick and thin. Their relationship had also blossomed, spending many nights sleeping together in the same tent as the campaign season continued, allowing them a level of intimacy Naruto hadn't expected or complained about. As he grew to appreciate and love his precious wife. Right now, I was doing him a favor. Personally overseeing the northern settlements, making sure no one was neglected or left behind. Of course, few people knew who he really was, apart from a few knights in the inner circle. All anyone believed him to be was the kind husband of their liberating queen, an image created while spending his time helping less fortunate and orphan children. But there was also his dark side, as with all things. The reason Voltringen's men never stood a chance was because as night fell, so did he, sabotaging, murdering, and often annihilating armies under the cover of darkness. Of course, there was the shocking news that Morgana Le Fay was a person. But aside from occasionally going out and making a little noise, she wasn't a big deal. Taking a last sip from his glass, he stood up and tossed a bag of coins to the wine cellar bartender. Seal down the settlement, evacuate if it's too noisy. Naruto spoke loudly enough for everyone present to hear as he walked out. As soon as he left the settlement, he used a body flicker to move outside the settlement boundaries and deeper into the wilderness, sharing active eyes as he wandered through the woods that belonged to his beloved lover. Whistle. And there it was, he immediately used a replacement jutsu, for the first time since the end of the ninja war. As soon as he did, the wood exploded into debris. Metallic sound. As katana and tanto collided, Naruto's eyes widened as his enemy was revealed. Madara Uchiha. In his shock, the blind shinobi was kicked in the stomach by the Uchiha, knocking him down. He quickly recovered and parried a sword strike, leaping to put some distance between himself and the enemy. Leaping into the foliage, the Uzumaki created several clones to distract Madara Uchiha. While the invading Uchiha was distracted, Naruto went deeper into the forest and chose a place to hide, while calling out to his longtime companion. Camelot. Kurama moved as he looked at Artoria, announcing, "Naruto is in trouble." The blonde-haired queen nodded, her face looking worried. "Is she still in Lancaster?" "Yes, very much so," the fox said before disappearing. Madara grabbed the last of the clones, choking him as he asked, "Where is the real Uzumaki Naruto?" The clone struggled as he replied, "Burnak in hell." The Uchiha's eyes widened in surprise as he let go, and immediately, the last of the clones exploded violently. As he looked up, another army of blonde clones and their leader, the true Uzumaki, stared at him, sharing a challenging conversation. "Tell me, Madara, how are you here?" "Uzumaki Naruto, Sharigan thief." The Uchiha greeted casually, causing the blonde to frown. "My eyes weren't stolen, you castrated puppet. They were a gift from my brother, whose death you caused." No Uchiha would give away their eyes. Madara sneered, causing Naruto to snort. "No Uchiha in their right mind would think of challenging the god of shinobi, but you did, betrayed your friend, and lost too." They narrowed their eyes at each other before hostilities began again. Naruto and his army descended, followed by an explosion of techniques as the intruder unleashed his Susanoo, eliminating several clones at once. But Naruto wasn't one to be denied, as he found himself wrapped in a familiar golden cloak. "You better not have gone soft on me, Kurama." In your dreams." "Now let's show this bastard our power," the fox replied as they stared at their opponent. Naruto bent his knees, building up chakra. The massive amount of energy he was gathering, reactivating his entire system at once, caused the ground to crack. Pieces of it began to float against gravity, and eventually, the blonde engaged again, discarding most of his clones. One that had hidden beneath his leg grabbed the Uchiha ancestor by the leg and threw him from the safety of his Susanoo, and the two opponents clashed in a taijutsu melee. Madara showed why he was once called the god of war. Despite not having any of his Edo Tensei counterparts' amplifiers, he still kept up with Naruto, who was in sync with his Biju. Throughout it all, he maintained a calm demeanor, while Uzumaki poured years of resentment and hatred behind his every move. His face was stern when Naruto finally scored a hit and knee to his opponent's chest. It was Madara's turn to fall, as Naruto followed up with a Rasengan. Unfortunately, Uzumaki missed completely, but the momentum allowed for another knee to the stomach. Madara retaliated by sending a punch that landed on the blonde's right cheek, followed by an uppercut. The two were briefly separated when Naruto teleported to his weapon, and Madara drew his gun by. The wind tornadoes the Uchiha unleashed were quickly stopped by Naruto's own wind jutsu, allowing him to cancel the wide area technique out of existence. The blonde followed that by shooting a stream of water from his mouth. The jutsu was well tuned, and it blew through the trees behind Madara once the Uchiha moved out of the way. Madara tilted his head to the side as he dodged a kunai, but quickly realized his mistake when Naruto appeared above him. A wind-style Rasengan met Susanoo, the ethereal warrior's defensive armor winning. Naruto surrounded himself with a similar construct, Sasuke Susanoo also surrounding him, as he stopped to look at his opponent. "Regardless of how you got here, I know you will die." The Susanoo continued to grow until they reached their peak, Naruto's being much larger as his was more of a complementary battle armor for Kurama. There was a smile on the Uchiha's face, the blue Susanoo falling around him as he looked up. "It seems I'm subject to your strongest. So now, you're subject to my strongest." Flipping through the familiar hand signs, Madara slammed his palm against the ground, summoning another gigantic nine-tailed fox. "Do you like it?" Naruto's eyes narrowed, as his Kurama was only half its power thanks to Minato, the other Biju was twice its size. And because he was under Uchiha control, it meant Madara was playing a risky game. But that suited the Uchiha very well, Naruto noted. It would be a tough, difficult battle, his very survival at stake. But when Madara finished assembling his own Kyuubi, Naruto's determination did not waver. Even if he died, he would kill Madara, for the sake of his wife. For the sake of his pregnant wife. He closed his eyes, absorbing the sounds of the battlefield. Suppressing his hatred for the Uchiha and clearing his mind. At the roar of the second beast, two men sprang into action. The Biju and the armored avatar fought for supremacy as they battled each other. It would seem that they were evenly matched. Naruto created a clone to hold the technique and teleported to the outside world where one of his marked kunai lay forgotten and began a long sequence of seals. 1. The battle had truly begun. Artoria rode as hard as she could. It was the first time she'd heard Kurama say Naruto was in serious trouble. She couldn't imagine who in Britain other than Merlin and the wizard Zeldris could cause trouble for her husband when they were in the city. Still, Lancaster was a long journey. She wondered as she made her way north if perhaps she should have gathered the knights to help her. In hindsight, she was still somewhat foolish and young. Guided by her emotions. But she was still a wife, loving her husband beyond what she had originally believed humanly possible. She lashed out at her loyal mare, riding even faster, despair gripping her soul. Maybe everything would be fine, maybe she was overreacting. But she couldn't leave it to chance. She'd never forgive herself for that, and for her son's sake, she wouldn't leave it to chance. Naruto, please get well. The landscape had turned black and gray, fires rose across the landscape, the earth cracked, the mountains shattered. The battle raged well into the night, and when dawn came, neither side was willing to stop attacking the other. Kurama, do you think you could absorb that Bijuu? Naruto asked, finding himself inside his mind as he looked at his old friend. I could, but there's no telling what you might need to do. Maybe you should prepare to seal him and me. The tailed beast replied, causing Naruto to frown. The blonde closed his eyes. It would weaken him significantly, but it would also weaken Madara, meaning they'd be on equal footing. The blonde concentrated on his movements, his Susanoo, along with the enemies, cracking. All he would have to do was find a way to remove Madara from his own, and use the contract seal to remove Madara's control over the alternate Kyuubi, and then he could seal it within himself. The Jinchuriki paused, taking a deep breath as he released his Susanoo and Bijuu form. The golden cloak around his body flickered and danced like a flame as he fell to the ground. Correcting his bearings, the blonde landed on his feet and created a new batch of shadow clones, each with orders to perform a specific suicidal task. To take down the beast's armor. While he himself would immobilize it. The clones disperse, leaving him alone as 9 thick chakra beams shoot out from his back and bind the Bijuu. This caught Madara's attention, and after looking around, he decided to abandon that plan once explosions of all kinds began to shake the Bijuu, who roared in pain, as he managing to break the Susanoo. Leaping to face Naruto, the Uchiha saw that his opponent had been waiting for him and smiled, I see you managed to break through the armor. But can you handle me and a rabbit Bijuu? I won't be handling you two for much longer, the blonde said, biting his thumb and lunging at his opponent. The two engaged in a taijutsu battle, the proximity suiting Naruto very well. Madara's refined and honed style was a sight to behold up close compared to his own less refined but more tanky style that allowed him to take more hits. Which was exactly what he was counting on. As soon as Madara punched him in the stomach, the Uzumaki grabbed his hand to hold the Uchiha in place and used the hand he had bitten and slammed it into the Uchiha while saying, contract. Seal. The effect was immediately felt as the savage Kyuubi stopped moving for a moment and pointed its lidded eyes at the two opponents. Its roar was magnificent and deafening. The two enemies stared at each other as Madara asked, do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I freed my friend from your hatred. Naruto replied with a cocky smirk, to which he knelt in front of him. The fight resumed and he was caught between two opponents, but that was fine with Naruto. He just needed a little more time to distract Madara after all. It was her second day of driving, and Artoria fought back the wave of morning sickness that had hit her and continued north, praying to whatever deity would listen to her plea that she'd arrive on time. She tried to stop as little as possible, only at settlements along the way to rest and feed the mare she was riding, or at a river when she felt her warhorse was too fatigued to continue. With each passing moment, her paranoia grew. She didn't want to fail him. The love he'd shown her was too great. She feared what would happen not only to her but to the kingdom as a whole if he were to disappear and die. The further north he went, the more and more rumors he heard of a cataclysm taking place. Of great waves and rivers rising over the horizon where none was supposed to exist, mountains falling and rising. And two armored beasts the size of mountains fighting each other. Naruto, I'm ready. Kurama yelled in his mind, and Naruto nodded, creating 10 shadow clones. It was time to seal the wild Bijuu. One by one, they faced Madara, who in his tired state, as the sun finally fell over the horizon, became easier to handle, while the real Naruto jumped in to deal with the Bijuu. Using his Bijuu mode, Uzumaki confronted the alternate Kurama. He quickly immobilized the Bijuu, and using one of his avatar's tails, he grabbed his opponent's chakra while extending his hand. The Torii seal key appeared after all, as it had in recent years. He began to fight the other Kuramas. The Bijuu's hatred was potent. It brought back all the horrible memories he couldn't think about. The feeling of loneliness returned in full force, drowning him in his failures, the people he'd let down, everything came crashing down on him. He closed his eyes, trying to rid himself of those images. He thought of Artoria, of her successes, of the happiest moment of his life. Naruto, I'm pregnant. Those words resurfaced in his mind as he smiled. Remembering hearing those words not even a week earlier filled him with joy and hope. But the beast firmly within his grasp, he sealed both Bijuu within himself. It was painful to put Kurama behind bars, but he had to do it for now. Madara fought with the last trio of clones, his eyes moving over the tree line as he noticed the distinct lack of Bijuu on the horizon, so you've sealed the beast. Artoria walked around the huddled masses moving south. She could see plumes of smoke and fire rising into the night sky. They were still a few miles away, and she could tell they had moved further along the path of destruction that remained on the horizon. After all, the rumors were true, but his horse was completely weary. He left her to rest at a camp while he went on foot to investigate the whereabouts of his lost love. The destruction was horrific. And from what the locals had said, there was no stopping it, no ceasefire. The two alien titans fought day and night, and people had even begun to fear it was the wrath of God. As he passed through a valley that was slowly burning, he became aware of the horrific sight. There was so much malice and hatred in the air, it was nauseating and dizzying. Whatever was happening, it was truly horrifying. Artoria looked up at the night sky. Storm clouds had gathered. Were things really that bad? Had the clouds been there before? She witnessed a dragon made of lightning descend from said clouds, and the roar of thunder that followed caused the ground beneath her to vibrate. The Queen of Nights fell for a moment but got back up, determined not to let her shadow down. The sun rose over the battlefield, bringing with it the colors of dawn. The two opponents were tired, weary, and hungry. They stumbled with every step they took, but they were determined to finish each other off. There was blood running from his split lips. One eye was closed due to its damage, his vision blurred. Naruto could barely stand as he was, and his left shoulder hung uselessly. He spat a bit of blood from his mouth. It wasn't as if his opponent was in any better condition. They both had very little chakra. A strong wind would knock them off their feet. Determined to end the threat to the person he loved, he threw the kunai at his enemy at random. But it missed, falling several feet short, and the Uchiha chuckled, scythe in hand. He ran, watching as the Uzumaki formed a lightning bolt in his hand. A pitiful last-ditch effort. Naruto closed his eyes as he let go of everything. He felt his surroundings as Madara ran towards him and smiled as he held Kakashi's Chidori. He didn't know if he was imagining it, an illusion of his starved and exhausted state. But he could feel Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura surrounding him. He could feel his parents giving him one last push, the Konoha 12, the 5 cage. The Alliance, the past Hokage. He could feel everyone, driving him to change the future of the world the wretched vampire had taken the Uchiha from. Madara's eyes widened as his body exploded with pain. The Uzumaki had used his Hiraishin to provoke his opponent, his technique ground into his back. He looked down at his chest, where a lightning-covered hand had pierced through him. I almost used a Rasengan. The Uchiha heard behind him, it's what I would have done. If I believed you could be saved. But the world you destroyed, the oaths you broke. They all bear witness to your sins. Kakashi taught us this technique to protect those we love most. I see. The Uchiha replied, you're not stupid, like Hashirama. No, I failed where he succeeded. Naruto admitted, but I won't fail again. Not her. Madara fell to the ground, his corpse lifeless. His blood stained the gravel beneath him. His eyes closed in resigned defeat. Naruto fell to his knees beside her, a flash of lightning disappearing from existence. Exhaustion washed over him as he too fell face first onto the ground, unconsciousness taking over. Chapter 5. Morning came too quickly for Artoria Pendragon, Queen of Britannia. Stretching out the kinks of sleep and looking around the room, she turned to find her husband obediently asleep in their marital bed, tired from the previous night's activities. The now 37-year-old woman smiled as she thought about everything they had accomplished so far, from finding love in the rocky and unstable beginnings of their relationship to liberating Great Britain and uniting the island under a single flag. Free from the shackles of tyranny and oppression, which earned her the title of Queen of Knights. Of course, very few knew that the Honorable Queen of Great Britain had a dark side, a shadow that made up the dirtier side of running a nation and keeping it safe and protected with finesse. Her husband Naruto Uzumaki, her shadow. He handled everything from exerting diplomatic pressure against foreigners to assassinating any potential threats. He was the one who infiltrated before every battle to ensure the odds remained in their favor. To most people, he was just her husband and advisor, a brilliant military tactician, to be sure, but an advisor most of the time. And, of course, the father of her brilliant, if spoiled, son. She leaned back and snuggled against him. It was rare for him to be home in Camelot. Not rare, but not common. So she treasured every moment she had with him. Mordred would be delighted that her father was back. Suddenly, she was abruptly brought back to reality. If only it were that simple, the words would be a harsh reminder of reality. When Artoria Pendragon found herself bleeding on the ground, her scabbard, Avalon, had been stolen from her. Stolen by the very daughter she had carried and betrayed her. The daughter who now cradled her as she lay dying. Flashback. Consequently, that was the chaotic night of thunder, as she had come to call it. She eventually found her husband's unconscious form next to his presumed enemy, who now sported a familiar body on his chest. With great struggle, he was brought back to Camelot. She had called for Merlin, and even the Uzumaki's former guardian, Zeldris, had appeared. It was then that she was informed of a terrifying prospect. Naruto here is overloaded with energy, 100 times what he normally produces and far exceeding his natural capacity. If the system containing this energy can't expand or adapt in time, it will break, and if that happens, well, he'll die. She protested, asking, couldn't Avalon cure him? Maybe, maybe not. That's not something I'm sure of. Zeldris said as he began to walk away. Whatever you choose to do, it's a gamble. If I were you, I'd prepare to say my final goodbyes. Not even a week later, Naruto Uzumaki was declared dead. Artoria never recovered from that. 7 months later, she gave birth to a baby girl. Mordred was a painful daily reminder, with his whisker marks on his cheeks and gestures that so perfectly mimicked his father's. He tried to show love for his daughter. He truly did, but the painful memories he could never let go of made it difficult for them to be in the same room. His father, Sir Ector, soon died, adding to the grief he felt. Artoria resolved to become the ruler she'd been told she should be, hardening her heart and forsaking any desires. Her focus became strictly on ruling Camelot and the kingdom. She became so distant that her inner circle began to resent her. Her own daughter wouldn't trust her. The retrospective ends. That was the poison that killed the great tree, Artoria noted. Mom, her daughter's voice cried, why didn't you give up? Why did you make me have to kill you? You weren't you the eldest? Pendragon stopped, realizing she was going to make up an excuse and lie to herself. As much as she wanted to, that whiskered face looked too much like her own for her to muster the courage to hate and lie too. I had to protect you. I didn't want to lose you just like your father. You didn't protect me, you barely raised me. Mordred replied, squeezing tighter. She knew her mother was never the same after her father's death. Though she never had the chance to meet him, based on what Artoria had told her and what she heard from some people around her. The man had been someone to look up to, though the snippets of information had been few. From what she gathered, the man had been extremely secretive and the extent of his actions went unnoticed. Years after the disastrous rebellion, which left many dead, Mordred continued to search for traces and stories of his parents, often turning to the wizard Merlin. Eventually, the magician led her to the door of an old acquaintance of her father. As soon as she raised her hand to knock on the door, it opened and a red-eyed old man greeted her. Did Merlin send you? She nodded silently, intimidated by the presence of such a being. He led her inside and, once they were settled, said, you're here for your father, Naruto Uzumaki. She nodded and asked, how did you know he was my father? Well, for one, the whiskers gave him away. The vampire replied, enjoying how flustered she became, as he continued, that young man. A true tragedy that he died. A man of his talent is impossible to find. Who was he? I mean as a person. There's so little left of him. I don't know why my mother destroyed everything about him. Mordred asked curiously, letting some of her frustration show. Actually, that was a protocol your father created. Zeldris said with amusement. If there was one thing your father feared, it was being used to hurt the people he loved. A justified fear, since where he comes from, there were techniques that allowed the dead to be revived. He'd seen that technique used against him and his allies in the war. He didn't want anything left of him should he die. Where? Curiosity continued to draw the young blonde. Yes, Naruto is not originally from this world. But for various reasons, his world was destroyed. I found him lying in Egypt, passed out in the sand after losing everything. The old man paused as he stood up. You ask me who Naruto was? He was many things. An orphan, a failure, unwanted, a sacrifice, a pawn. But he was also a hero, a warrior, a man of principle. He was selfless, ambitious, brave, foolish, a genius. He was willing to endure the darkness of the world, but don't mistake that. He wasn't a martyr, he despised being a martyr. I wish I could have met him, Mordred murmured. Wait here, the vampire ordered as he walked away. A few minutes later, he returned with 2 different knives and handed them to her, the butt end pointing towards her. I managed to retrieve them. The longer one was a weapon passed down to him by his master, I believe it was known as White Fang, and the other is a knife he used to aid him in combat. Mordred picked up the 2 weapons and brought them closer for inspection. Then he placed a book on the table, and I think this was his favorite story, written by someone very dear to him, his own namesake. Mordred opened the book, but found it was written in characters he could not read. The vampire laughed, much to his guest's irritation. I forgot about the language barrier. Whatever, I'll treasure this anyway, the blonde girl replied. Yes, now. You should be on your way. I hope you've learned enough to satisfy your curiosity. Zeldris said, receiving a nod of confirmation, and escorted the lady to the door. Before she left, he left a final cryptic message. Don't be so oppressed, you might meet your parents again. Do you know why he died? The question seemed to be asked randomly by the girl. Yeah. Chapter 1 continued. He woke up with a start. His breathing was shallow and ragged, almost gasping for air. He felt as if his body was on fire and at the same time, he was shivering from the cold. All the memories came flooding back to him at once. He touched his face. His skin was cold to the touch. When he stood up, he noticed he wasn't wearing his shirt. But he was in an unfamiliar place. Then he noticed something. He could practically taste the natural chakra in the air. Since when had there been natural chakra on Earth? He threw his feet up onto the bed, his mind still not fully awake after that 3-day fight with Madara. He cursed Zeldris's name. The old vampire had betrayed him. That was the only possible explanation for why Madara, in his prime, had attacked him. Melancholy filled him, wondering what was going on. Had he failed Artoria? He must have, otherwise there was no way he wouldn't have woken up without her watching over him. As his mind awoke, another fact registered in his brain. Chakra signatures. Her mind went on high alert, but after a few minutes of no one breaking into her room, she decided to try something. He took a step toward the bedroom mirror, which was above a dressing table. It must have been a girl's room. He pushed chakra into his eyes, expecting to see the familiar red Sharingan eyes, but nothing. Naruto closed his eyes, the natural energy and chakra signatures. He must have been sent back to the elemental nations. But how? And why was his Sharingan gone? He thought about it for a moment, it was best to prepare for a fight to get some answers. Naruto sighed as he stood in front of the door. If only he didn't have Sasuke's eyes anymore. Then maybe he could resort to an old but reliable technique. He took a deep breath as he focused, trying to remember exactly how much sage energy he should absorb. But the door burst open as soon as it started, a familiar voice and a figure shouting Naruto. That gave him pause. His eyes widened, his entire body frozen in shock at the figure standing in front of him. No, it can't be. Good. He tried to raise a trembling hand. But his body was too weak and his knees began to buckle beneath him. Her voice was weak as she cried, "Jai Jiraiya-sensei." Hot tears began to fall from her eyes. It was as if the scar that had healed during her time on Earth had reopened. Reopening with it a torrent of tears, her sobs drowned out everything around her. He stopped responding to everything around him, as he would simply cry until he got tired and fell asleep again. Naruto finally woke up, this time after an indeterminate amount of time. He noticed Jiraiya nearby reading a scroll. This time, however, his mind was clear. His tears were spent, and although he was still exhausted, he didn't feel another attack like the one he had the first time he woke up. Naruto sat up, scratching the back of his neck. You probably want an explanation, right, sensei? Well, considering this is the first time you've addressed me as anything other than a perverted sage, yeah, an explanation would be nice, Jiraiya said humorously. Where are we? Suna, she fainted with me, she got very sick. This was the closest village, your friend Gaara has been very worried about you, the sage replied. Call him, he deserves to know, everyone does. Naruto said, I don't know if you'll believe me. But the least you deserve is the truth. Gaara raised his non-existent eyebrow as he watched his friend sitting on the ground. Naruto Uzumaki was a strange person. But right now, he was acting weirder than usual, even drinking sake. Setting down his cup, the Uzumaki gave a resigned sigh. Very well, before we begin, here's what I'm going to tell you too. It may sound a little crazy, but I swear, under a seal of loyalty, that I'm telling nothing but the truth. The other two shinobi looked at each other, wondering what he was talking about, but allowed him to continue. Second, understand that what I am about to say is something that is very painful to me, so try to pay as much attention as possible. The fewer times you have to repeat it, the better for me. The depression in his voice was palpable as Naruto began, the fourth great ninja war will begin in 8 months. It will not be village against village, nor nation against nation. What are you talking about, Naruto? Jiraiya asked, surprised. With a straight face, Naruto replied, the Akatsuki is a puppet organization for one man. He was behind the Kyuubi attack and many unrelated but carefully coordinated events, such as the Uchiha massacre, the blood purges in the hidden village in the Hinata, and the rise of Akatsuki as a terrorist organization. And no matter how hard we try, we can't stop them from obtaining 7 of the 9 Biju. Like Konoha and Suna, the vast majority of the Biju are already beyond our reach. 3 and 6 being Isobu and Seiken, along with their Jinchuriki Yagura and Utakata. Yagura will be killed by Mei Tamuri, all I know is that she is leading the resistance in the mist, and that Utakata is a wandering ninja who will eventually reside with the Tsuchigumo clan heiress, Hateru. With me so far. Receiving a nod from the other 2 ninja, he continued, Yujito Nai of Kumo, Han and Rashi of Tsuchi no Kuni, along with their Biju, Fu and Chimei of Waterfall, Isobu the 3 Tails. Sabaku no Gaara and Shukaku, all of these Jinchuriki and beasts will be captured by Akatsuki within a period of 6 months. And sadly, there is nothing we can do to stop it. Gaara, you are only surviving thanks to a jutsu created by Granny Chiyo. How do you know all this? Gaara asked in a hollow voice. Because I've already lived through this. The fourth ninja war was a conflict that lasted 2 days and was the end of the world. Naruto replied, pouring himself another cup and drinking it, I was saved by someone named Kishir Zelrich Schweinerg. All you need to know, if there's such a thing as a god. This man is the closest thing to it, he's not even human anymore. I doubt even with a Rinnegan and the Juubi I'd stand a chance against him. He's an expert at space-time manipulation, and he took me to another dimension. Naruto looked at their faces in silence as they absorbed the information. I am no longer the teenager you once knew. When I saw the end of the world and the death of everyone I loved, there was nothing I wanted to do more than die. This man saved my life and gave me a purpose, he married me to a wonderful woman. She was in many ways similar to me, but smarter. And together we built the world of his dreams. But an event unfolded, and somehow I am here again. The Jinchuriki paused and sighed, please understand that my priorities now are to return to my wife's side. She is pregnant, so I will do everything I can to prevent the apocalypse from consuming this world again. I cannot say that I am loyal to that or the leaf. I see. Jiraiya said, before asking, may I see this loyalty seal you deemed necessary to put on yourself? Naruto nods and reaches behind his head, peeling a piece of sticky paper from his neck and passing it to Jiraiya. The man examines him and says, this would have been very painful if you were lying to us, Naruto. So I'll believe you. If the sage believes you, so do I. Gar responded as well. Thank you. I want you all to know that, even though I haven't said it before, I love you. Losing both of you, all of you, was the most painful thing ever. It was a lot of nights well spent with Artoria before I could sleep without your faces haunting me. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, his shoulders slumping, feeling lighter than he had in half a decade. Kid, I've seen what losing the ones they love does to people. The fact that you can even face us now, you are brave. Jiraiya said. But now, according to yourself, we have a war to prepare for. Naruto nodded solemnly, fortunately, I learned a number of techniques during my time in Britain. But if my last battle was anything to go by, I'm nowhere near ready. Let's make these 8 months count. Tsunade cursed a brat known as Uzumaki Naruto for the new headache she had on her hands. The blonde-haired, green-eyed woman dressed in a strange, exotic battle dress had been brought into the hospital with extensive injuries. She appeared to be about 17 years old. She didn't speak the Big Five language and kept calling out to the only shinobi currently not in the village. Naruto, damn Uzumaki. I would have to wait for the weekly report that Jiraiya sent. Great. Simply brilliant. I was going to put the brat on D-class missions permanently because of this headache. Artoria collapsed in the strange white room she was forced to stay in. When the strangely dressed people finally left, she was trapped in a strange land, which thanks to Naruto, she recognized as her homeland. Unfortunately, she didn't speak their language and they didn't speak hers. So she opted to stick with something they both understood. Her husband's name. After they achieved that family bond, they gave her a pink-haired woman as a sort of guardian who came to see her from time to time, apart from the other strange people. She was truly lost, in constant mental breakdowns. The guilt of her sins weighed heavily on her. All she could do was curl up and cry. Why did things turn out the way they did? Jiraiya whistled as he watched Naruto fight the Kazukiage. It was a sight to behold, and the fact that he got to see the FTG in use once again was the ticket that sold him. The fact that Naruto had created his own variant made the man proud. For the past week, the genin had spent every waking moment relearning, retraining, and memorizing everything he could about the elemental nations, their techniques, and any scrap of jutsu thrown at him. And it was worth it. The fight was brutal, with few techniques left unused. Of course, the Kazukiage was also proactive and practiced jutsu from time to time. But the Uzumaki was fast. Too fast to even catch. There was something else about Naruto that was currently giving him an advantage. Something that nearly caused Jiraiya to die of a heart attack. Two things, really. The cooperation of his Biju, along with Sage Mode. The pervert's attention was momentarily diverted from the battle when he looked at one of his toad summons. Master Jiraiya, you have a message from Tsunade. Well, what does she want? He asked himself as he took the scroll and opened it. His eyes narrowed. Naruto. He shouted, causing the two combatants to stop fighting. Naruto trotted up to him, yeah, what is it? Do you recognize his son? The sage asked, flipping through the picture Tsunade had attached to the scroll. Naruto's eyes widened comically as his hands began to shake. Artoria, is she in Konoha? Apparently, and giving Tsunade a headache. Jiraiya said as he narrowed his eyes at his student, what are you going to do? Have the toad summon us to Konoha? I can't leave my wife alone in a strange land, Naruto replied. Ara, who had come up behind Naruto, said, go with her. She needs you right now. The blonde nodded as Jiraiya placed a hand on his shoulder, will you be ready? I will be, I must be. Naruto replied, knowing what Jiraiya meant, will you be ready to face everyone? Returning to Konoha, Naruto ignored everyone in the hospital, staring at Artoria's very distinct signature in the back of his mind. He could have teleported to her now that he was so close, he could feel the precise seal getting closer. Artoria. She cried out upon seeing her. Sakura was tending to her. But that mattered little to her as she launched herself at her and swept her into a hug. She felt her partner tense beneath her arms, but his grip only tightened before he pulled back, his hands cupping her cheeks as he asked, are you okay? She looked away as she nodded, but he used his grip on her cheeks to force her to look at him and sealed their lips together. The stress she felt immediately disappeared. The girl beneath him burst into tears, sobbing into his shirt, I'm sorry I failed you and everyone. Naruto hugged her, stepping back a little to signal Sakura to leave, who did so without question. Naruto held Artoria until she fell asleep from exhaustion. He wiped away her tears once she was fast asleep in his grasp, cradling her like a delicate child. Soon enough, Tsunade walked in, Sakura right behind her. The platinum blonde wasn't at all happy to see him as she hissed, "Do you know how much trouble he's caused us? You'd better get used to her because she's my wife." Naruto replied without irony, laying her down on the bed and lifting the sheets past her shoulders. Once he was sure she was comfortable, he followed the Hokage and his apprentice out of the room. "Naruto, can you explain to me how you managed to marry a foreigner who doesn't even speak the mainland's language?" Tsunade asked laconically. "Don't forget, she doesn't even seem to know what technology is," Sakura pointed out, to which Naruto sighed. "Look, Tsunade, Sakura. I know I owe you both an explanation." Naruto paused to look back at the room, "But right now, my priorities are with Artoria. Once I know she's okay, I'll tell you everything." His face hardened, not wanting to know what she'd gone through to end up in the Konoha hospital, even though she was supposed to be in England, a completely separate dimension. "Fine, brat, at least your feelings seem genuine, but since you identified her as your wife, as a non-citizen of Konoha or the Land of Fire, there's a lot of paperwork and on top of that medical bills, but your insurance as a ninja covers at least most of the bill." Tsunade informed. "Sakura, why don't you catch up? While I go talk to her teacher about not telling me when our favorite genin got married." "Naruto." Sakura spoke as Naruto gestured for them to return to the room. "She's going to need a lot of medical attention, especially with the trauma she's going through. When we found her, and thank God we did, she had life-threatening injuries. If we had arrived a minute later, she would have died." "Sakura, how's your healing going?" Naruto asked, concerned by the troubling news. "If you're wondering if she heals like you? No. She heals pretty fast for a human, but nothing like you," the pink-haired girl replied. "That's extremely worrying, her healing rate should have put mine to shame," the Jinchuriki said, worried for his wife. "That's I see," Sakura said before pausing as they walked through the door to the patient's room. "I know you have questions, Sakura, and I promise I'll answer them," the blonde said, looking at his sleeping wife, "but right now, I need to take care of her." "Do you really love her?" Sakura asked slowly. "She saved my life in more ways than I can count. I know that doesn't make sense right now, but I promise you it will soon." Chapter 2 Explanations. Artoria slowly began to wake from her dreamless sleep. The first thing she noticed when her sleep-heavy eyes began to open was the sound. That foreign language, reminding her that she was alone and lost in this world. There were two people speaking, both men. One was, as she had come to expect, a complete stranger, but the other was comforting, a voice she knew well but couldn't immediately recall. She closed her eyes again, determined to ignore them. Until she realized whose voice it was, she immediately sat up and threw the covers off herself. "Naruto." The blonde Uzumaki turned to look at her and gave her a warm smile. Behind him, a tall, broad, white-haired man stood with his arms crossed, looking at her curiously. "Artoria, you've woken up. Welcome to Konoha Central Hospital." Naruto greeted her as if it were an average Sunday morning. The Uzumaki turned to look at the person behind him and said, "Sensei, can you go find Sakura?" The man nodded and disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving the two of them alone. Naruto moved to the chair next to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Naruto." Artoria murmured, looking away from him. The weight of her sins and failures weighed heavily on her shoulders. "What's up, Artoria?" The green-eyed girl gripped the sheets tightly, hot tears streaming down her face. Her face twisted in pain, causing her husband to move toward her and take her in his arms. 20 years. She began. "You've been dead for 20 years. Naruto hardened his face to prevent his surprise from showing as he let her speak. "Everything went wrong. I wasn't ready to be queen. I didn't deserve it. I went back to Merlin's teachings. When I gave birth to your girl, the pain was too fresh. I ruined everything. All I wanted was to protect her." Artoria stopped, tears turning to sobs. "Camelot, everything went up in flames, the inner circle shattered. In the end, Mordred, our sweet son, finally put an end to it all, and to me. As I deserved." Naruto's heart sank as he closed his eyes. He heard her speak of herself in such a disparaging manner. Blaming herself for every mistake after his unknowing departure, from letting others raise her daughter when she wouldn't, to mishandling seemingly insignificant issues that erupted into another civil war once she ended Artoria's reign with her death at her daughter's arm. As she told him everything she blamed herself for, Naruto himself couldn't help but feel guilt in himself as well. He didn't allow Artoria to fight her own battles, make mistakes, and learn from them. As a result, what was left was an inept ruler who, while learning a bit about politics, had no real idea how to run a nation. What's worse, from what he could gather, the people around her probably had their own agendas. He could hardly name a single face in her inner circle other than that French knight Lancelot. "Artoria," Naruto spoke barely above a whisper, "I know the pain you're going through. The feeling that you've failed everyone. It's something I'm intimately familiar with." Artoria slowly began to calm down as she listened. "When I first met you, all I could feel was numbness. But look what I've become. I've learned from the mistakes I made. It hurts more when you try to keep it all to yourself. Believe me, I know. When I first met you, I wondered what the point of living was. I was nothing more than a machine going through the motions. It's hard for me to believe that every day I wake up. But it was you I needed. With our days together, you gave me meaning. So, now it's my turn. He pulled back to gauge her reaction. After a moment of staring into each other's eyes, she finally nodded silently. He kissed her and said, I wish I'd been a better husband to you. That I could have been there to watch over you both. I wish I hadn't been so protective of you, that I'd allowed you to grow up naturally. But I promise you, from now on, I'll always be there for you. Through thick and thin. The green-eyed girl closed her eyes and kissed him back, promising, and I promise you I won't be the same weak little girl again. And if we have another child, I'll be the mother he and Mordor deserve to have. They kissed again, finding comfort in each other's embrace. The door opened and footsteps were heard. The two blondes finally separated, with Naruto giving her one more kiss on the nose as he had become accustomed to doing. He turned to the people who had entered, Sakura as expected, Shizune carrying a stack of papers, Kakashi, which surprised Naruto, and to his even greater surprise, the man was carrying a bag of what he could smell like Ichiraku ramen. And of course Jiraiya. Everyone, it's good to see you all, especially Kakashi-sensei. Naruto greeted, returning to his native language and theirs before turning to Artoria and switching back to English. Artoria, these are my friends and family. The pink-haired girl is Sakura. I take it you two know each other. She was my teammate back in my glory days. Shizune here, she's like a sister to me. Kakashi-sensei, as you know, he's the man I strive to be, and my godfather, Jiraiya. She gave everyone a shy nod and a small wave, before turning to the shinobi. Everyone, this is Artoria Pendragon, my wife. As some of you may know, she doesn't speak the language. You have some explaining to do, Naruto. Sakura says you haven't left her side since you arrived, but I suppose that's only natural given who she is to you. Kakashi said as he held the ramen, I brought you a little welcome gift. Oh, Kakashi-sensei, you're my savior. Naruto said with a smile, before turning to the two nurses, what is his condition? She's fine to be discharged as soon as Sakura-chan gives her a final checkup. And here's all the paperwork you'll be filling out. Shizune replied as she walked over to a nearby stand where some medical tools were set out and placed the paperwork underneath the container that held said tools. By the way, it's nice to see you, Naruto-kun. Let Tsunade know I'm almost ready to give you all the explanation I owe you. Naruto shouted as he moved toward the door, reminding her, and make sure the old hag brings Iruka-sensei. Shizune gave one last bow as she left. Kakashi followed her and left the room so that it was just Naruto, Sakura and Jiraiya. Okay, my love. Sakura here is going to run some tests to make sure your health is in good condition. Naruto informed his wife before turning to Jiraiya, what are you doing here? I wanted to see for myself who your brat wife was. Jiraiya said, man, you're going to break a lot of hearts. But good for you, I can see the love you have for her is real. Much like Minato and Kushina. Artoria is fine. She can be dismissed in a couple of hours. Sakura informed the Jinchuriki with a smile. If I were you, I'd first complete her medical documentation so we can have it on file quickly. Once you've done that, I'll sign the release form. You got it, Sakura. Naruto replied, giving her a thumbs up. As the last two invaders left the room, the couple breathed a sigh of relief. The Uzumaki held up the bag of ramen and smiled wickedly, Artoria, welcome to the age of enlightenment. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at his wife's misfortune with the chopsticks, despite the look he received. Must you mock me like this? Who in their right mind uses sticks as utensils? What happened to a good old spoon? A fork? Artoria complained. Naruto chuckled good-naturedly before scooping some noodles from his own broth and bringing it to his lips, here. He quickly took a bite and quickly took another. The noodles tasted divine, it's so tasty. That's because we have ingredients you don't. Naruto joked, feeding her more noodles, this is my favorite food. Cheap, warm, made a lonely night a little less lonely. Once fed, Naruto set a shadow clone to fill out the forms, and with a quick kiss he said goodbye, knowing their spirits had lifted significantly. I have to give these guys an explanation, I owe it to them. I understand, be quick. Naruto soon arrived at the Hokage's office. While outside, he took several deep breaths to calm his nerves and controlled his facial expression. He grabbed the handle and said to himself, they deserve to know. When he opened the door and crossed the threshold, he saw Kakashi-sensei, Sakura, Iruka-sensei, Tsunade, Shikamaru and Shizune. Shikamaru, who was closest to the door, high-fived him, welcoming him back. I didn't know you were back. Any idea why this meeting was called? Yeah, I know, in fact, I asked Tsunade about you and Iruka specifically. Naruto replied, receiving a typical Nar response, troublesome. Well, brat. Tsunade shouted as she walked further into the room, I think it's time you told us what the hell is going on here. Well, first things first. Jiraiya already knows everything, and he can confirm that everything he's about to tell you is true. A long explanation later. That's very hard to believe. Tsunade declared, breaking the silence in the room, I wouldn't believe it, but the information you've provided. Things you're not supposed to know. You were willing to repeat it under a seal of loyalty. I have to find everything you said to be true. Kakashi stood behind Naruto and placed a hand on his shoulder, giving it a squeeze, but didn't say anything. Naruto, Sakura murmured, her eyes wide, and ran to him, giving him a hug. I don't blame you didn't fail. I'm glad you managed to survive and find happiness. Thank you Sakura. Naruto said with a sigh of relief, and I promise you that Sasuke will eventually find his own way back. It seems my student has grown, Iruka-sensei said as he wiped a tear from his eye, he's a man now. But there's still one problem. You said a war is coming. Troublesome, but it's a good thing Naruto decided to divulge this to as few people as possible. If this information were to get out, it would be a liability. Shikamaru emphasized, before turning to Uzumaki, but I can tell you're already in a stronger position than the first time around. But the fact remains that we've already significantly altered the timeline with the appearance of your wife. So, we're going to have to be more vigilant. You're absolutely right, Shikamaru, Naruto noted, as much as I'd like to change the timeline, try to save everyone, prevent the war. Because of Zetsu, things could change beyond our control. I hate to say this, but we must let the events leading up to the Great War unfold. As soon as Artoria is released from the hospital, we'll return to our journey. Try to minimize the impact of the fact that I've returned. Perhaps that would be best. Tsunade chimed in. Looks like my genin has grown up a brilliant and mature strategist, Kakashi snorted, causing Naruto to laugh. Scratching the back of his neck, Naruto asked, Kakashi, maybe when I get back. Can we share a drink? I've wanted to do that since you know. I got you Naruto, as sensei I'll even pay too. Chapter 3 A kind of meeting. After being discharged from the hospital, Naruto picked up Artoria and informed her, we'll be leaving the village for a couple of months. There are a few things we need to do mainly, focusing on an intensive course in teaching you the language of the elemental nations. I see question, why are you dressed like a baboon? The green-eyed girl asked, not happy with the orange and black monstrosity her husband was wearing, don't you have a better wardrobe? If I remember correctly no, I have several of these games I don't know what I was thinking back then. Naruto said with a smile, Sasuke really must have influenced me more than I thought. We're buying you a new outfit. I won't have a jester for a husband. Artoria declared, her voice full of senseless impudence. But Artoria, I'm the class clown. Naruto said with a hearty laugh, only to receive a punch in the shoulder. I'll inform Jiraiya on how to empty his pockets, the Jinchuriki noted as he packed up the last of his restocked supplies. Jiraiya stroked his chin contemplatively as they walked down the road toward their next destination, so the lady wants you to buy a new pair of clothes. Yep. Naruto said, his hand intertwined with Artoria's, according to her, I look like a clown. A small laugh escaped his lips, by the way, I want you to know that you're going to pay for whatever my lovely wife wants me to wear. Why do I have to pay? You have a fat wallet. Jiraiya complained, only to shrug, you're the godfather and a successful rider. You have 21 years to earn money on gifts, money, and whatever else a godfather does. 20 oh right, time travel stuff Jiraiya uttered to himself, scratching the back of his neck. She agreed to go shopping for clothes and pay for them as well. The Uzumaki said, shifting his attention to his English wife, what is it you wish to dress me up as your highness? When I'm done with you, you'll be dressed like a king, said the green-eyed woman. Knowing you, armor and shoulder pads. Naruto said with a snort. HMPF, sorry for worrying. Naruto turned to Jiraiya and asked, Jiraiya, do you know where we can find a costume armor maker, maybe a stop in one of the cities? And knowing my Artoria we should let her browse while we sit and play cards, it'll be a while. Night finally fell when they reached the city. Naruto went to find a hotel to leave the woman sleeping on his back. Upon his return to the elemental nations, he was freed to travel with Jiraiya again. Naruto had told Artoria to hop on his back for a piggy ride and suggested to his mentor that they should travel through a medium he missed dearly. 3 jumps. They arrived in good time at a border town large enough to house a decent-sized shopping center, but they still had a blacksmith due to its important tactical location for Konoha's security. Arriving at nightfall, but not that late, the hotels had already closed. Jiraiya, of course, had opted to go drink at a bar. Settling into his room, Naruto placed his wife on the bed and, after making sure she was comfortable, sat down beside her, pondering what his next move should be. Artoria needed to learn the language, but she also had to train hard to match the fighting prowess and level of the elemental nations. She wasn't weak by any means, but her opponent faced a world-ending threat. He closed his eyes as he lay back. Reaching for a scroll from his return trip, he opened a bottle of alcohol and took a swig. Closing his eyes, he found himself in a familiar place. With a familiar presence sitting beside him. Well, loser. Somehow fate finds a way to keep you alive. Sasuke spoke, materializing, his appearance altering slightly to match his friend's age. 20 years, Sasuke. Naruto said, I missed my son's life. God, I'm still a failure. Have you ever not been a failure? The Uchiha asked, attempting humor. But regardless. What do you plan to do about me? Find the little shit. Give him back his memories. Naruto said. We still need you to bring Orochimaru and the Hokage to the war. Without them, the alliance doesn't stand much of a chance. And you think he'll do it just because you gave him my memories? HN. There was disappointment on the Uchiha's face. I'll put you back inside her body if I have to. Naruto sneered, don't play dumb with me, Uchiha. The blonde took a sip of the drink he had materialized within the world. This time we'll save the world. But we can't risk changing too much until at least Pain attacks Konoha. Gaara still has to die, and the others too. Why are you here, Sasuke? Naruto asked curiously, glancing at his friend. Still can't use your six-pass mode? Sasuke asked. I don't know. When I couldn't activate your Sharingan, I was afraid I'd lost all my abilities. The Uzumaki replied, you want me to heal Itachi, right? Perhaps. Sasuke admitted. Maybe it's a selfish wish. Although, we both knew he was ready to die. It's a tragedy, but I'll make sure he's remembered for what he truly was, Naruto replied. The spirit nodded and dematerialized. Leaving Naruto alone, it turned further inward, where the 8-trigram seal contained a dormant biju. Naruto walked toward Kurama and began to rise, so he was face to face with the seal. His hand reached for the paper concealing the intricate lock. The Uzumaki closed his eyes and just as he was about to remove the paper, he stopped and walked away from the cage. Opening his eyes, he found himself back in reality. Artoria's angelic features illuminated the moonlight. As he watched her sleep, her expression slowly shifted from calm to agitated and furrowed brows. He crawled over to her and shook his beloved awake. Artoria, are you having a nightmare? He asked softly. Her green eyes widened before closing again. She leaned closer to him, saying wearily, it wasn't pleasant. I'll join you soon, he promised, leaning in to kiss her cheeks. As he straightened, he felt a large chakra signature. One that was familiar, but he knew didn't belong to Konoha. Naruto left the room, finding himself at the highest vantage point. He looked toward the west side of the village. That's where Jiraiya was, but the massive signature was coming from the northwest. He whistled as he walked toward the village that bordered the Land of Fire and the Hot Water Village, though firmly within the Land of Fire's boundaries. He'd managed to escape from his brother again to go on vacation and decided a nice long trip to the Land of Fire was in order. As the Jinchuriki headed towards the gates, he was stopped by a feeling and looked towards a dark clearing where a blonde teenager with sideburns sat, his eyes closed, but he seemed to know exactly who it was as he called out, Lord 8, it seems you're a long way from where you're supposed to be. Who are you supposed to be? You're a fool. The dark-skinned man asked as he walked into the clearing. Don't you recognize me? Naruto asked as he opened his eyes. Ah, Miss 9. Coincidentally, we're here. Killer Bee said in surprise. Naruto closed his eyes once more as he spoke, the Akatsuki will begin their movement sometime within the next 3 months. They will come for us in the end. I see. The Eight-Tails Jinchuriki said gravely. I'll send a friend of mine undercover. The leader of Akatsuki is leading the world to war. We need to unite the flags to win. The Reikage is key to achieving a summit. Killer Bee remained silent as he carefully observed the Jinchuriki. You are a manipulative Mr. 9. No, but I've seen the consequences of being caught off guard now. If you'll excuse me, I have another guest to attend, Naruto told her as he disappeared in an instant. What are you planning, Mr. 9? The Kumo native asked himself. Master Flash's son looked just like his old man. This is a dangerous game you're playing, Jayuki said. Wasn't your father known for that? Naruto appeared in his room. Artoria went back to sleep as expected. Glancing over to a corner, she stood up and turned on the lights, jumping a little in surprise and placing her hand over her heart, hissing, Zeldris. What are you doing here? Was sending Madara after me not enough? Are you going to kill my wife and me here too? Calm down, boy. The vampire said softly, extending a bundle in his arms to Naruto. Will you take this? Naruto took a suspicious step forward and saw that it was a sleeping child. The man frowned sharply as he asked, what are you doing with this child? Give it to me before you do something crazy with him. Don't worry. I was hoping you'd accept it here, the old wizard replies. Who's that? Artoria's voice called out as the former queen sat up from her bed and after scratching her eyes, Naruto. Zeldris. How's he here? Ah, the lady I was hoping to see. The wizard shouted, listen, I need both of you to do me a favor. I found this pretty little girl. Her parents were murdered. I need you all to raise her. The Uzumaki took a deep breath. I only have a small apartment for one person. There's no way Artoria and I can raise a child in a place like that. Well, would you rather I pick it up? No. Both Naruto and Artoria yelled in protest, waking the sleeping bundle, who immediately began to cry. Naruto tried to calm the boy down and noticed something, whisker marks. Mordred. Artoria murmured, freezing mid-step as she tried to reach out to the child to try and calm him down. Since she'd never forgotten her baby's face, he couldn't mistake her. That was her baby. Well, not exactly like your Mordred, but sure now, there's something we need to discuss, privately. Well, Naruto, you didn't tell me about this. Jiraiya said as he checked on his godson. There, in the bed, slept the Uzumaki and the foreign girl, and between them a baby who seemed to resemble both of them. With whisker marks and pale blonde hair. Tsunade isn't going to be happy about this, you said, with a child, not with a child. Jiraiya whispered while stroking his chin. The blonde Uzumaki opened his eyes and untangled himself from the strange grip he was in. He slid out of bed and into the hallway, motioning for Jiraiya to follow him. We have a problem. Naruto said loudly, making Jiraiya sneer, you think, brat? No, we have a problem. Zeldris is still lurking in my life. The old bastard is messing with things so much that I'm not sure how stable the timeline will hold. If you recall, I wasn't married or had a child at this stage yet. Naruto said aloud, but with Artoria's presence, and now a child. The blonde shuddered, pausing for a moment, and now I need to save up for a bigger apartment or hell maybe even a house. Yes, we have a problem, all right. The wise man nodded, understanding what his apprentice meant. Do you know if my parents left me anything? Naruto asked curiously, could that be put in a house? I'll have to go through Sarutobi's things, but I'm sure I can turn something up. Odgama-chan is going to get so skinny. Chapter 4. 2 months after the impromptu visit to Konoha, Naruto stood in front of Tsunade. Gone was his orange-black jumpsuit, instead, he was wearing something more typical of Konoha. The Konoha blues, BDU pants and long-sleeved undershirt. Over said underpants, he wore a breastplate similar to his wife's and pauldrons to cover his shoulder. Overall, it was quite reminiscent of the armor worn by the Sannin themselves during the Second Shinobi War. Beside him was his wife, holding a bundle in her arms. It didn't take a genius to figure out what she was holding. Tsunade closed her eyes, massaging her temples at the drastic change in the current situation. Naruto, you didn't inform me that you had a son. Is it too late to mention that Artoria is also technically a queen? Naruto asked, putting on his best nice guy face before turning serious. The situation is quite delicate. With Zeldris lurking around, changing even seemingly unimportant things like my status as a husband or father could have far-reaching consequences. Inevitably, Artoria and Mordred will become targets of the Akatsuki, or even people like Danzo. Tsunade looked at the teenager real man, as his face hardened even more, his face grave. I will never hesitate again. For my family and the village. Good. Tsunade said with a nod, before pointing at the paler blonde, what's wrong with her? Thanks to Master Zeldris, I've gained a perfect understanding of the language, Lady Tsunade. Artoria spoke, her gaze never leaving the bundle in her arms. But she didn't need to look up to sense the surprise of the woman who ruled the village. I wasn't kidding when I said Zeldris is the closest thing to a god I know. Naruto mentioned, regardless, we should start preparing. As soon as the mission to rescue Gaara comes up, everything becomes a speeding train headed for war. There was a knock on the office door before the door opened, revealing the 3 Konoha elders. The Jinchuriki immediately assumed a protective stance upon seeing Danzo and closed his eyes, activating his ancient requisition. The leader of the group, Danzo, spoke in a demanding tone. Lady Tsunade, I have heard rumors that the brat is returning with a seemingly disturbing package. Disturbing package, isn't it? Strange way to refer to my family, glory hound. Naruto replied dispassionately, what's wrong with your old bones anyway? Danzo. That's your name, isn't it? Keeping his eyes closed, the Jinchuriki took a step forward, standing so that he was directly between the old man and his family. I heard about you, an old warhawk with a mind more addled than a meth addict. You lost your arm and your eye trying to fight the Sandaime Hokage, TSK, if you had a death wish, you should have said so. Naruto. Tsunade spoke, slamming her fist on her desk. Was all the Hokage received in response. Narrowing her eyes, Tsunade turned to the elders. Naruto Uzumaki has returned to the village with a wife who is a foreigner, true. But all the investigations on her have been verified. Investigations? Udatane asked. We didn't know there was an investigation into a foreigner. That's because I asked to keep it a secret. Naruto spoke as he approached the Hokage's desk. Do you understand the risk of the situation? If it were known that Konoha's Jinchuriki had a wife, let alone a child, especially to Akatsuki. It would be disastrous. It could even be a situation similar to the Kyuubi attack. Naruto, do you have knowledge of the Kyuubi attack that we're not aware of? Tsunade asked seriously, causing the boy to nod. As you may know, female Jinchuriki have a singular weakness, childbirth. Somehow, the leader of Akatsuki knew my mother would give birth to me, when and where. Despite all the safety precautions, this man is no mere shinobi. He managed to force the Yondaime's hand. Protect a child, or secure the Jinchuriki. The Uzumaki explained, opening his blue eyes. I should have secured the Jinchuriki, Danzo commented idly. It wouldn't have worked, the assailant has space-time ninjutsu like my father. Naruto said as he glared at Danzo, let the child, me, die, combine that with a weak seal, and the poor emotional state my mother would have been in sacrificing her newborn. You still would have had a Kyuubi on the loose, not to mention an uncooperative Jinchuriki and someone very powerful all at once. If he had done what you said, the village wouldn't have survived. But I'm not surprised to hear that from you, heartless and illogical, no wonder you make so many bad calls. The brat is right, Midokado spoke, adjusting his glasses, you seem to have matured, the trip with the Toad-san did you a lot of good. If we had known you would end up like this earlier, I would have suggested it to Hiruzen. In hindsight, it's 2020, esteemed elder, Naruto told him, turning his attention to the white-haired old man, perhaps it was for the best that Hiruzen left me alone. If there's one thing I've learned about dealing with the Bijuu, it's that they are the most corrupting forces if left alone. When dealing with them, there should be no room for hatred and resentment. The Kyuubi can sense all manner of negative emotions. In my love for Artoria and learning the sacrifice my parents made for me and this village, I've been able to tame its hatred for humans. If that were to disappear, dealing with a beast would become a near impossible task, even for me. So the Bijuu can sense emotions, that's a game changer. The old man noted as he stroked his beard. Well then, if you're satisfied with the answers my shinobi have provided, I have much work to do. Tsunade said disdainfully as she took a sheet of paper. Once she heard footsteps beyond the office threshold, she let out a sigh, only to gasp in surprise when Uzumaki spoke, there is one more matter we must discuss. Artoria watched as Naruto tapped his pants with his boots, her face worried as she worked diligently. After his meeting with Tsunade, his adoptive grandfather had given the Uzumaki a pleasant surprise. In response to his newfound need. The Senju compound was large enough to accommodate the parents and their son, plus a few extras. The main living area had been cleared for them to live in, as well as a small connected guesthouse and workshop shed, all connected via the backyard, which contained a garden that seemed hastily revived. Watching you get ready like this, it worries me, the green-eyed woman admitted, this isn't like the other times, this feels extremely personal to you. You're almost gleeful. Naruto paused, am I really that excited? The blonde man shook his head. His thought stopped when he admitted, I admit, this is very personal to me. You could say this is revenge. Is this one of those things you haven't told me about yet? Queen Pendragon asked, placing a closed fist on her chest. The day I was born was one of tragedy, yet Kurama's rampage was blamed on the innocent. There was depression in his voice, Artoria noted, the Uchiha clan was blamed for an atrocity they didn't commit. The immediate response was the extinction of an entire clan. Almost exiled, no, in a way they were exiled. Forced to live in a confined space, always watched, distrusted, unwelcome. It was a fear that the leaders of this village failed to quell in their actions. In the end, the clan plotted to usurp control, a coup d'etat. Spies from within the clan reported this to the Sandaime, and negotiations began immediately. But the elders, for one reason or another, sabotaged the peace talks until violence was inevitable. A false order was given, and overnight, an entire clan was wiped off the face of the earth. The only survivor was my closest friend, so, in a way, it's personal. Artoria wrapped her arms around him, I still don't understand this world. But I'm glad I can be by your side through it all. I'm glad to have you. The Uzumaki replied, kissing her right arm, and in the short time we've had her. I'm glad to have little Mordred too. Seeing you two laughing and happy, it feels like all my burdens have been lifted. Though physically speaking, she's not biologically ours. The hairy Uchiha decided to try to sleep after having afternoon tea and finishing the day's chores. As she sat up in bed, she said to herself, TSK. What is Tsunade turning this village into? He's preparing the place for the future, a voice said, causing her to start reaching for a knife. Aware that she lived alone, she shouted, who's there? The red and black eyes pierced the shadows of her room, making her gasp, Itachi. There, Naruto Uzumaki. The shadow revealed itself to be the demon brat. His eyes were dispassionate and cold, did you miss me? What do you think you're doing? The old man hissed, only to be met with silence. After a while, the blonde spoke, Tsunade has signed your death warrant. For your role in the genocide of a clan, as well as being an accomplice to blood theft. She tried to attack, only to find herself paralyzed. The Konoha elder found her eyes sinking into sleep, making it difficult to defend herself. What are you doing to me? Poison is a funny thing. Tasteless and odorless droughts do exist, but we shinobi insist on not controlling everything we consume. Uzumaki said with a dark chuckle. Tomorrow morning, the world will wake up and Kahari Uchiha will have died of poisoning in her sleep. Killed by her friend and council member. A fitting end for a wench such as yourself. Damn you bastard. Day after. The Konoha rumor mill worked quickly as a blonde couple attended the funeral of two village elders who had served since seemingly eternal times. It was said that one elder poisoned the other and then hanged himself. But the noise of the apparent suicide had been drowned out by a certain group. Hours before Uchiha was found, as expected. A certain note had arrived via pigeon, Gaara had been kidnapped. Naruto, Sakura, Kakashi, along with Team Guy, had been sent to retrieve the Kazukiage. They arrived at Hidden Sand Village, Sakura getting to work on Kankuro. A worried Temari paced back and forth. "Calm down, you're going to wear out the floor," Kakashi tried to joke, only to receive a glare. "We should plan our strategy now," Naruto began, earning a nod from Kakashi. He turned to Temari and asked, "Where is Elder Chiyo?" "Why do you need Old Lady Chiyo?" Temari asked in a demanding tone. "Sasori of the Red Sands is one of our opponents. She has one of the key abilities needed to win this fight." The Uzumaki replied without missing a beat, "Temari, you know your brother is a close friend of mine, there's nothing I want more than to bring him back safely, so please. Trust me on this." The intensity of his gaze made the Sand brother stop, who nodded and went to look for the eldest. "Listen. The plan is as follows. You seem confident despite being caught in my genjutsu, Naruto-kun." Itachi Uchiha stated emotionlessly, seeing his smirking opponent. "Just the man I wanted to see, Itachi." "What do you mean?" Itachi asked with narrowed eyes. "I know what really happened that day. 2 of the 3 were killed on Tsunade's orders by my hand." Naruto replied, "I'm starting my preparations for the 3rd. His eyes turned downcast, "You were given something no child should have to endure. If anyone deserved to succeed my father, it's you." "How?" the Uchiha began, but was quickly interrupted. "That is something I wish to discuss with you, but not here. I have the perfect location in mind." Itachi nodded, "I see. How can I trust you, who speak the truth, Naruto-kun? You'll need someone to watch over Sasuke once you're gone, won't you? You don't have much time left in this place, but I promised everyone that one day I'll bring peace to this place, and I'll start by breaking the cycle you've unknowingly sent Sasuke into. Because he was my closest friend." The Uzumaki said, "He was lucky to have a brother like you." "I see. Until then, Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto watched as Chiyo worked to revive Gaara, just like last time. They arrived too late, but unlike last time, the fight was over before it began. Naruto proved to himself that he wasn't the same genin he had once been. As he stared dispassionately at the corpses of Madara and Sasori, he silently prayed. "How can I hate? How can I fight against someone like me? Who understands loneliness and failure like I do?" "Ah, so that was it, young man." Chiyo said weakly, I'm not sure I can trust you. But you sound so sincere I can't help but not want to believe it. I must keep my promise to complete that goal, or else it will all be in vain." The Uzumaki assured him with a smile. "Thank you, Uzumaki Naruto." Gaara offered as he stood in front of Suna's gate. Naruto smiled, extending a hand, which the Kazuki had shook. "Keep up the good work, Gaara. One day, we'll sit as equals. Believe it. Konoha." "Well done, brat," Tsunade complimented, tossing Naruto a familiar vest. "You passed your probationary period as rescue team leader. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have promoted you. But from what Jiraiya told me and the results of this mission, you've earned it. There's no point in staying as a genin, you need mobility." "Thanks, Grandma. You won't regret this." Chapter 5. Artoria, are you satisfied with your life?" Naruto asked out loud out of nowhere while chopping some potatoes. The pale blonde woman looked at him curiously, blinking as she processed the question. "Satisfied?" he wondered, reflecting on his long life. "Extremely so. I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes that led to the deaths of many, but as I hold our daughter in my arms once more, every time I wake up next to you, I realize I had the chance to do it again and learn from my mistakes. And I get to do it with you by my side." The blue-eyed man replied while lost in thought. He picked up the cutting board and moved it towards the pot, pushing the freshly cut potatoes into the water. "You managed to get through it much faster than I did." There was a moment of silence before the former queen spoke. "When I embraced Mordred again, I truly embraced her. I rediscovered love, even if I don't think I'm worthy of it. I will not neglect my son again, nor will I waste your time." Naruto nodded, placing a lid over the boiling potatoes. "I wish you were the one to take down Obito Uchiha." There was surprise written all over Artoria's face as she listened to him explain. "I once forgave Obito. He was once Kakashi-sensei's teammate, and he was like me in a way. We were both considered failures, and we both wanted to be Hokage, and if I ever lose the people I love, maybe I'll end up like him too. I had plans to bring him to my side before, but that was back when there wasn't a child to worry about." "I see." Artoria nodded, "Then I'll kill him for Mordred." "Artoria, it just occurred to me that we didn't have a proper wedding," the Uzumaki noted, "so after the war is over, I'd like the chance to marry you. For real this time." "Foolish husband, if that is your wish, so be it." Naruto froze upon hearing those words, before starting to laugh. The Pendragon glared at the Uzumaki while holding his stomach. "Sorry, but that came out in such a way that it reminded me of someone." Naruto answered her curious look as he turned off the heat for the rice. "Maybe if we have time later today, ask me about the greatest hero of all." His name was Itachi. He was fond of the phrase, "foolish little brother," and the tone he used was exactly that. An hour later. Naruto welcomed the last of the guests, while Artoria set the tables. Inside, Sakura, Kakashi, and Shikamaru were already seated. Kakashi was making silly gestures to the baby, while Sakura carried little Mordred. Shikamaru sat in a nearby chair, watching the sensei and the student duo. "Niji," Naruto said as he placed his hand on the door, "thanks for coming after dinner, I have something important to discuss with you." "You've changed, Naruto." Niji pointed out, to which the blonde nodded, "Yes, when your eyes see what mine have seen. It's impossible to remain the same." Niji was taken completely by surprise when the kaleidoscopic red and black eyes stared back at him. "Don't speak of this about anyone, not even Kakashi knows, only Tsunade and Jiraiya know. I'm only divulging this to you because with your eyes it's only a matter of time until you find out." "I see." Niji said as he grabbed Naruto's arm, "Before we came in, how did you find them?" "It was a gift from an old friend," the Uzumaki replied as he opened the door. "Ah, you must be Niji Hyuga." A voice called out as a pale blonde woman placed a tray of food on the table. "Niji, this is Artoria Uzumaki, my wife." Naruto gestured to her as he introduced her to the Jounin, "And the little bundle over there is our son, Mordred Uzumaki." "I see you certainly haven't been idle." The Hyuga commented as he sat down. "Boy, Uzumaki, do you have food ready?" Another voice yelled, causing Naruto to freeze. "Zeldris, fortunately I've come to wait for everything with you. The food will begin to be served shortly," Naruto replied, sounding defeated. "Who is he?" Niji asked, prompting the Uzumaki to respond. "An old friend of mine." Once everyone was seated at the table, dinner began. Zeldris took the opportunity to strike up a conversation. "So, lad. What have you been up to since you last departed the kingdom and took your wife hostage?" The Uzumaki choked on a piece of pork belly he had stuffed into his mouth, violently cutting the food lodged in his throat and drinking a large amount of water. 4 pairs of eyes fell upon the Uzumaki as his wife patted him on the back, looking at the white-haired old man. "Ma, I'm just joking," Zeldris said, trying to calm everyone down. "You better be, you were the one who arranged our marriage," Naruto said with his eyes closed as he stuffed a piece of stewed potatoes into his mouth. "Speaking of which, did you know that Naruto refused to kiss Artoria after being declared married?" The old man replied once again, a booming laugh escaping his lips. "Honestly, Naruto, you're hopeless." Sakura commented as the boy sighed. "He left me alone that night too." Artoria chimed in, hoping he'd come out in a good mood. Which prompted a lot of laughter. "Yeah, make fun of a 15-year-old's inexperience too, why don't you?" the man said, rolling his eyes. "You know, my cute little student, you might have thought of one of Master Jiraiya's writings," Kakashi mentioned skillfully, while waving his small orange book. "What is this making fun of Naruto's day?" the Jounin asked himself as his forehead rested on the table. "Dad." Mordred cried as she staggered towards her father, causing the Uzumaki to bend down and pick her up in his arms as he rocked her from side to side. From the courtyard, Artoria looked in watching him, Kakashi and Sakura sitting with her chatting idly. "It seems like only yesterday I ran into a trio of dysfunctional troublemakers," Kakashi said with nostalgia in his voice. "Were we really that bad?" the pink-haired doctor asked. Nodding, the silver-haired Haddock replied, "Yeah, you were. Too focused on Sasuke, he barely had any skills as a shinobi, I partly blame myself for that. I didn't teach you 3 much. But look, you know, the apprentice of a Hokage. And Naruto. If only all of Team 7 were here," Sakura said, "this feels incomplete." "Are you talking about Sasuke Uchiha?" Artoria asked, an expectant look on her face. "Yeah, what's wrong with him?" Haruno asked cautiously. Seeing the pink-haired girl's cautious look, Artoria replied lightly, I was just wondering. Well, my husband isn't one to talk much about his past, there are 2 people he spoke highly of. Kakashi Haddock and Sasuke Uchiha." Just Sasuke and Kakashi?" Sakura asked quietly. The Pendragon turned Uzumaki around and straightened his shoulders. "I meant no disrespect, Sakura. Naruto spoke very rarely about you. I know he used to have feelings for you, but he explained to me that those feelings died along with this world the day Kagaya Otsutsuki won. He avoids speaking of things that cause him pain unless he has a strategic purpose or some need. That's just the person he's become. There's a lot I still don't know. For example, I know he had a few students he took under his wing. But I don't know their names and that his last mission was to save a close friend. But who that friend is, not the slightest clue." "I see." Long after the visiting shinobi disappeared, Artoria went to put the boy to bed, leaving Naruto and Zeldris alone in the courtyard. The old mage watched the blonde as he concentrated, sparks of lightning leaping around his body as he remained on neutral guard. "Try again," the vampire shouted, causing Naruto to open his eyes. 2 years and 3 months. "I haven't mastered it yet." "No, you've made progress. At first, you couldn't even get a reaction to happen." Zeldris said, "What is it you like to say, never give up? Then prove it." Then. As he lay in bed, his eyes glued to the ceiling, his thoughts began to wander, thinking about his 2nd anniversary with Artoria. Of course, what was supposed to be a day of celebration had turned sour after a chance encounter with Morgan Le Fay. To him, it had been just another brush with death, nothing special. After all, if Zabuza's words were true, a shinobi faced death so often that it no longer bothered them. But it had left a change inside poor Artoria. I guess she finally realized she wasn't as unkillable as she would have liked. Hey, Naruto, a familiar called from across the street as the Uzumaki searched for a stand for a quick midday snack. Naruto turned toward the sound and saw Team Kurenai walking toward him. Hiba, Shino, Kurenai-sensei, he greeted most of the members before his eyes narrowed on the last one, who fell a couple of steps behind, Hinata-san. She felt a tug on her leg and saw her daughter, whom she had left a few minutes earlier, while she was flipping through the selection with her arms raised, on the verge of tears. She smiled as she bent down to pick Mordred up from the floor. You, hungry little lady. Naruto reached out with his free arm and channeled some chakra into the sealing band on his wrist and caught the bottle of milk he had stored inside before passing it to his son, who took it from his hand and rested his little head on his shoulders, looking at the strangers momentarily before closing his eyes as he drank from the bottle. Whoa, Naruto, when did you have time to go out and have a kid? Inyazuka asked, expressing the surprise of all his companions. Kurenai nodded and added to her student's question, especially for someone as young as you. Well, my wife and I love each other too much. We met as soon as Jiraiya secured me passage on one of the most dangerous routes. We survived with a very beautiful girl, we got married, and now little Mordred is here. Naruto replied with a smile. How about you be a genin? Are you still a genin? Hey, I want you to know that I'm a chunin, we all are, except you, Kiba replied, only to see his rival friend yawn. Why would I want to be a chunin? The pay is much better as a jounin ninja. Naruto-san, I think I'm in for a treat if I heard correctly, married with a child. Shino chimed in, nodding to his fellow shinobi. Shino, as considerate and courteous as ever, don't change your friend, Naruto commented as he began to walk away. If you'll excuse me, the lady is tired, I must take her home before she wakes up and makes a scene, she's that bossy. Once Kiba felt he was out of earshot, he turned to his teammates. The whisker marks are definitely his, but did you see the color of his eyes? And the color of his hair too. Why does that matter, Kiba? Shino asked tonelessly. The eyes, do you think he bucked to Mari? Beep. Chapter 6. Murder Encounter. The spoon flew through the air, spinning and splashing its contents onto a specific target. Mordred Uzumaki screamed at the top of his lungs as he made his displeasure known to humanity. Mordred hated the green guppy food his parents insisted on feeding him. Naruto wiped the food splatter off his cheek with a towel as he laughed at his grumpy son. I guess that's fair. I wouldn't want to eat that either. The blonde father stood up as he picked up his steaming bowl of cup ramen with the leftover pork belly and beef ribs from the night before, along with a soft-boiled egg, and placed it on his lap. He took one of the pieces of pork belly and bit it to make a bite suitable for a 6-month-old baby. He placed a piece near her lips. Quick as a fox, the little girl sucked the piece into her mouth and looked up at her father. Her gaze was clear. She wanted more. Using his index finger and thumb, he tore off small pieces of noodles, blowing on them a little to cool them before giving them to her. After a few minutes of repeatedly feeding her son ramen, she was satisfied, relaxing in her newly acquired feeding chair, sipping some milk with droopy eyes. Naruto, did you feed Mordred? Artoria's voice came from the hallway, her head peeking out of the bathroom. Yeah. I should probably knock him out soon enough. The blue-eyed man replied with a smile. Thank you. His wife's voice came from the bathroom, quickly reminding him, don't forget to put her to bed before you leave. His eyes fell on the 6-month-old, who was probably struggling with his eyelid to stay awake. The smile on his lips widened. I'm so glad I had you, I love you, Mo-chan. Cautiously, he picked up the baby girl and kissed her forehead before laying her in her crib. He closed the door to her room as he left and went to prepare for the last of his secret orders. Danzo walked down an abandoned path outside the walls of the Hidden Leaf, escorted only by one of his most trusted ninja. The Akatsuki leader had called a meeting with the old man, and the Warhawk wanted to use it as an opportunity to strengthen his position. As they walked their 30th mile away from the nearest town, the old man stopped and turned around. Who are you? Your death wish. The masked man replied as Danzo was sent flying back, his left arm severed before he was kicked away. Itachi. The old man exclaimed in surprise as the special limb burst into black fire. No, I'm much worse. The voice replied, moving faster than the elderly shinobi could follow, and cut in. The root leader was shocked and horrified as a deep laceration opened up in his chest, spurting blood everywhere before he fell backward. TSK. Did Sasuke really spend all that time to kill this pest? Naruto wondered to himself as he looked at the body, eyes bleeding red and black, and burned the body after whispering to himself, Amaterasu. I should probably go, I have a friend to visit in an hour and northeast to hunt, the Uzumaki said to himself after a few minutes of watching the black fire. Oh, my Naruto-kun, aren't you even going to greet your old friend Tobi? Another voice called out from behind a tree trunk as a familiar masked figure revealed himself. Didn't you hear me? I have a date, shit to do and get ready, I'll deal with you later. Uzumaki said disdainfully, waving his hand for the man to leave. Obito was surprised by the casual dismissal of his potential victim and the sense of superiority the nine tails Jinchuriki displayed. Discarding the front, the masked man said, "Oh, do you know me, Jinchuriki? Of course, every animal has a predator. The Akatsuki hunt the lesser Jinchuriki, I hunt the Akatsuki. Is it natural that I'm familiar with my prey?" Naruto stated emotionlessly, replacing his own mask on his face. Obito laughed darkly, "Would you bet your family's safety on that?" The blonde turned around, his back to his opponent, "The only one betting here is you. I'm not my mom, and I'm certainly not my dad's. I will not give you a quick death. I will take my time to make sure that any pain you think you know is amplified 100-fold until your mind shatters, until you manage to find a way to extinguish your own miserable existence." "How dark of you, Naruto-kun." The Uchiha commented, certainly a departure from Minato and Kushina-chan. Suddenly, the Akatsuki leader found himself backed against a tree as a foot rested on his shoulders, blue eyes staring at him through the holes in his masks. "Do not let my parents' names escape your lips. You are not worthy to speak of them." The blonde approached Obito, who was genuinely surprised, and whispered in his ear. "Neither the name of Kakashi-sensei is worthy of escaping your lips, nor is that of Rin Nahara." "Careful, Naruto-kun, this is a dangerous game you're playing," the Uchiha growled. Naruto's eyes narrowed, "I'm glad we've come to an understanding. If you try to harm my family, I will break every rule of war ever set. Just as you wish, and I will make you regret your miserable existence." Obito grabbed the blonde's leg and threw him against a tree trunk, only to see a flash of light as the boy disappeared. With narrowed eyes, the Uchiha said to himself, "I'll enjoy breaking you, Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto appeared in an alley in the middle of Konoha and let out a sigh of relief. He looked up at the sky, took a deep breath, and exhaled. He reached for his hair and brushed it back. Looking down at his hands, he noticed they were trembling. "I'm nervous, thank God I avoided a fight." Closing his eyes, the blonde tried to relax. Things were starting to spiral out of control. He needed more allies. He had to keep Artoria and Mordred safe. He wanted to protect the leaf, prevent the end of the world at all costs. "I should have killed Obito where he stood." Suddenly, he shook his head, rationalizing, it would have been a long, drawn-out fight. "I hate to say it, but Obito is strong even without the Juubi and Rinnegan, and I don't have the Kyuubi on my side yet." He slid down the wall until he was sitting, his train of thought continuing, "In Britain it was so easy, because I had no other ties to the land besides Artoria, not to mention the lack of super soldiers trained and honed over the generations to kill. But here, every enemy I face has the potential to end my life. Not to mention I can't seem to control my emotions around these guys, and here I consider myself the perfect shinobi. Forgive me, Haku." "Naruto." Sakura's voice squealed through the air as the teenager stood in the middle of the crater that led into and out of Orochimaru's hideout. In front of the Uzumaki, a 16-year-old Sasuke stood before the blonde, slowly drawing his sword. The ripe red eyes of the Sharingan were revealed in the charcoal eyes of the Uchiha, who made eye contact with the blue eyes of his rival. Suddenly, Sasuke's face became confused as he discovered he was no longer face to face with the blonde or with the Kyuubi residing within the teenager. But rather, a copy of himself. An older, slightly more jaded version of himself. "Why did you let him go?" Kakashi asked, only to see his blonde student close his eyes and cross his arms. Naruto took a moment to respond, replying, "As things stand now, the situation simply makes it impossible to bring him back. If we were to capture him, the masked man, Toby, would have simply barged into where we put Sasuke and broken it. The last thing we need is to make an enemy out of Sasuke when he can still return willingly." "Sasuke will come back, right, Naruto?" Sakura asked, only to see a loud rise and fall of his chest. "He may, eventually. But I won't be the one to raise your hopes for his return," Naruto answers his teammate's query. "You're taking a terrible risk here, Naruto," Kakashi warned. "That borders on betrayal, letting him go like that. Don't you remember, Kakashi? I'm trying to prevent the end of the world. I've already changed things so much that it's becoming risky," the Uzumaki informed. "Besides, Tsunade made me a jounin for a reason I didn't know. Trust my judgment or trust that Jiraiya trusts my judgment." The trio arrived in Konoha during the afternoon hours of the day. An awkward silence fell over Team 7, and the three parted ways shortly after passing through the village gates. As Naruto walked home, he felt a presence behind him. Turning his shoulder to look at the person, he noticed it was Hinata Hyuga. "Naruto-kun." The shy girl greeted him in a meek voice. Images from the past flashed before his eyes momentarily, making his face appear blurry before he finally answered, "Hinata-san. Welcome back." Naruto turned his back completely on her. "I know why you're here. I know you have feelings for me, the romantic kind." "How?" the Hyuga asked as she brought her hands to her face. The Uzumaki struggled to keep his tone under control as he quickly replied, "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you should forget those feelings. I never had feelings for you, and frankly, I never will." Turning to face the girl fully, seeing the shock and horror in her features, he continued, "Don't be surprised. We hardly ever interact. I don't know why you feel the way you do. What a web you've woven for yourself, but I'm not who you think I am." "That's not true." The girl screamed, causing all activity on the street to stop for a moment. "Hinata, I honestly hate people like you. What would you sacrifice for this crush of yours?" Naruto asked, his eyes cold with apathy as he raised his hand, inspecting the wedding ring he had bought for his partner the day he had proposed to her. "Besides, you should know this already. I'm married. Even if she died, I wouldn't replace her or remarry. Be honest with yourself, other than trying to get my attention, what is your purpose for becoming a shinobi?" "To become clan head and lead my clan," Hinata whispered to herself. That lacked conviction. "Tell me, have you ever killed anyone?" The Uzumaki followed, only to receive a nod that meant no. Lowering his hand, he continued, "Hinata. This career is not for the faint of heart. If you refuse to kill your enemy, many will pay the price. If you have no ambition or drive, you'll have those around you killed. If I were you, I'd do myself a favor and leave the ninja force. This lifestyle is not for you." Satisfied that he had spoken his mind, the Jinchuriki walked away, his home being his final destination for the day. Artoria towel dried her hair as she left the bathroom, narrowing her eyes as she wrapped a second towel around her. A weapon appeared in her hand as she began to walk slowly. She turned toward the farthest door in the hallway. She slowly opened it, holding the gun up in front of her. She saw her son sleeping in her and her husband's bed. He opened the door wider and entered the room, inspecting every inch with his vision. "Slip away." The white mask with a wolf painted on it greeted her sigh as her spear pierced the skin of the intruder who had tried to sneak behind her. The blonde watched apathetically as the unknown ninja collapsed lifelessly to the ground. "Artoria." A familiar voice called from the front door. A few seconds later, Naruto was standing at the other end of the hallway, his eyes on the body. After a few moments of silence, a name came from his lips. "Obito." Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.